Chapter 1527. Li Jinan grunted from the blow. He quickly turned around and pulled her into his arms as he replied, "No. She decided on it at the last minute. I couldn't do anything about it." As he spoke, his large hands moved to touch her body. When he saw the red mark on her neck, he asked, "Why is it so red?" Yu slapped his hand away. "It's all your fault. You didn't even warn me." Yu pointed at herself. "How could you not know your limits? That's too much." Li Jinan grabbed her hand and said, "Where? You won't be able to see anything if you put on your clothes. Don't think too much about it. Clothes won't cover it at all." Yu grew even angrier. She punched him twice. Li Jinan carried her and rolled in a circle. He pinned her under his body and said, "I'll get some clothes to cover it up." Yu pushed his face away. "Go away. Get up. When is your mother coming?" "I don't know, but she's definitely sleeping right now." Li Jinan put all his weight on her and said, "They don't wake up this early. Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Yu was furious. She reached out and smacked him on the arm. "Weren't you the one who woke me up?" "Oh." Li Jinan chuckled. "I was wrong. Let's sleep a little longer." Yu couldn't sleep. She pushed him away and pressed herself on top of him. "This is the first time I'm meeting your mother. Should I dress up a little?" "There's no need. My mother doesn't like to wear heavy makeup. You can just wear what you usually do." "Then should I dress a little nicer?" "You look good in anything." Yuyu's lips broke into a smile. She couldn't resist pushing him away. "Be serious." "I'm very serious," Li Jinan boasted shamelessly. He grabbed her hand and placed it on his chest. "Touch my conscience. It's burning hot. It's so real." Yuyu couldn't resist laughing out loud. "Shameless? Yeah, that's what I want. If it weren't for this face, would I have been able to get a wife?" Li Jinan kissed her on the lips. "Can you still sleep? What do you think? If you can't sleep, why don't we do some morning exercise?" Li Jinan's eyes turned into crescents with a hint of mischief. Yu glared at him and replied, "I'll kill you." With that, she raised her knee and pushed him away. "I'm not coming." "What are you thinking about?" Li Jinan looked a little exasperated as he faintly said, "I was thinking of going for a jog with you and buying some breakfast on the way. That way I won't have to cook. Your thoughts are so bad." Yu grew even angrier. She stood up and sat to the side as she exclaimed, "You tricked me." "Of course not. You were the one who thought wrongly. How can you blame me?" Li Jinan caught up with her and said, "Get up, get dressed and go jogging." Yu didn't want to move at all. She said pitifully, "My legs are weak. Let me give you a massage." As he spoke, he placed Yu down and pulled her legs apart. His movements were meticulous. Yu was ticklish. She winced as he rubbed her. She laughed out loud. "Ticklish. Feels good." Li Jinan applied even more force. His hands moved higher and higher. It was getting more and more arousing. Yu shrunk her legs back. Her breathing quickened as she asked, "Why are you?" Li Jinan couldn't bear it any longer. He pounced on her and asked, "What's wrong with me?" "Yeah." Yu narrowed her eyes and hugged him. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Both of them froze. Their movements froze on the spot. Chapter 1528. This time it wasn't just Yu who was shocked. Even Li Jinan was shocked. Almost at the same time, both of them straightened up. Yu immediately pushed him away and scrambled to put on her clothes. Li Jinan appeared much calmer. When he saw how flustered Yu was, he said, "Don't be nervous. It might not be my mother." Yu rummaged through her clothes. Without turning her head, she said, "You're still talking? Hurry up and open the door." Only then did Li Jinan slowly climb out of bed. After looking for his clothes, he casually put on a set of home clothes before leisurely walking out. The doorbell was still ringing. Li Jinan slowly walked over and asked, "You're here. Who is it?" Qin Shuhua had been left at the door for quite some time. She was a little annoyed, but when she looked at the time, she suppressed her annoyance and said, "Brat, hurry up and open the door." Li Jinan opened the door with a sleepy look on his face. Especially when she saw Qin Shuhua, she was shocked and said, "Mom, why are you here so early?" Seeing him like this, Qin Shuhua quietly pulled him to the side and asked, "Where's the girl? Is she with you?" "Yeah." Li Jinan yawned. "You're here too early. You told me you were coming today, but you didn't say what time." Qin Shuhua had been prepared for this. Since she was going to live with her son, any advance notice would be in vain. If he wanted to find out the true colors of his future daughter-in-law, He could only conduct a surprise inspection. Qin Shuhua looked inside and said, "Where is he? Where did he go? Are you still asleep?" "That's right. It's so early and we're not farming or chopping firewood. There's nothing to do even if we wake up. It's better to sleep a little longer." He went to the kitchen to wash his hands and poured a cup of warm water for Qin Shuhua. "Did you come alone?" "Of course. Do you expect your father to come?" Qin Shuhua gave him a look that said, "You're spouting nonsense." She took the water from his hand and asked, "Did the girl know that I was coming?" "I didn't tell her." Li Jinan lied through his teeth. "I was thinking of giving her a surprise, but you came so early and turned it into a shock." When Qin Shuhua heard that, she looked at her son and said, "Why didn't you tell her in advance?" "That's too much." "You're not bad either." Li Jinan pushed her to sit on the sofa. "I haven't brushed my teeth yet." "Mom, take a seat. I'll go wash up." "Hurry up." Qin Shuhua smiled. She was delighted. "So, you two are living together. How long have you been living together?" "Not long, I'll tell you later." Good. Qin Shuhua's eyes followed his back. When she saw Li Jinan walk in, she immediately stood up and looked around. The furnishings were very Li Jinan's style. They were very simple. However, it looked like it had added a lot of feminine flair to it. That was something that Li Jinan would never put on. For example, there was a doll on the bookshelf on the wall, a beautiful picture frame on the display cabinet, an oil painting on the wall. Most importantly, the surroundings were very clean. There wasn't a speck of dust. After looking inside, Qin Shuhua realized that Li Jinan wouldn't be coming out anytime soon. She headed back to the kitchen. Whether a woman was virtuous or not, whether she was clean or not, the most important thing was to look at the kitchen. Chapter 1529. When Qin Shuhua entered, she saw the neatly arranged electrical appliances. There was an electric rice cooker, an induction cooker, an electric juicer, and a microwave oven. They all looked new. She looked around and opened the disinfection cabinet. The utensils were neatly stacked. She opened the refrigerator. Fruits, eggs, milk, drinks, snacks. Everything was there. Li Jinan wouldn't have prepared these things. It had to have been prepared by that woman. It seemed like she knew how to live her life. Li Jinan didn't know how to take care of himself, and he wasn't willing to return to the old manner. Having such a woman take care of him seemed like a good idea. Qin Shuhua nodded her head. She was very satisfied. She looked at the floor. It was so clean that not a single strand of hair could be seen. Not bad. Not bad. She moved to the living room, sofa, and other places. Everything was neatly arranged. Not bad. That's right. Just this collection and organization alone was enough to put Li Jinan down. Suddenly there was a commotion inside. Qin Shuhua quickly sat down on the sofa. From the sound of the footsteps, it wasn't Li Jinan's. It was the light footsteps of a woman. Qin Shuhua turned her head and immediately saw a woman in a white dress. She looked to be in her 20s. Her features were delicate and quiet. She wore a long sleeveless white dress without makeup. Her hair was neither too long nor too short and fell to the side of her ears. She looked clean and refreshing. When Yi Yu saw that Qin Shuhua's face bore some resemblance to Li Jinan's, she immediately knew who she was. She smiled shyly and greeted, "Hello, Auntie." Qin Shuhua had heard about Yi Yu's situation and various descriptions, but the feeling was nowhere near as intense as seeing her in person. She looked like a very clean and shy girl. Qin Shuhua stood up and smiled at Yi Yu. "Hello, you must be Miss Yi, right?" "Yes, Auntie. You can just call me Yu Yu." Yi Yu walked over. When she saw that Qin Shuhua had a glass of water in front of her, she immediately extended her hand and said, "Please take a seat. Would you like a drink? I bought some drinks yesterday and put them on the shelf." "It's fine. I'm not thirsty." Qin Shuhua smiled and said, "You take a seat too. You take a seat too." Yi Yu's heart raced. She was extremely nervous. This was the first time Yi Yu had experienced the feeling of meeting her parents. She had grown up with Shen Luo, and so naturally she had met his parents before. Therefore, even when they were talking about marriage, they didn't feel too nervous. However, Li Jinan's mother was different. Although her relationship with Li Jinan was passionate and intimate, in Yi Yu's heart, they were still far from the point where they could meet her parents. When she saw Li Jinan's mother, she felt nervous and awkward. Faced with Qin Shuhua's scrutinizing gaze, Yi Yu felt her skin crawl. "I've long heard from the kids that you're very good-looking and gentle. Now that I look at you, it's indeed true. No wonder our Nan likes you so much." Qin Shuhua's eyes turned into crescents. "Are you 25 this year?" "Yes, Auntie." "Not too young. Where did you go to school before?" "Auntie, it's in the capital. The capital? Northerners? You can say that I'm a northerner. I grew up in Cloud Town until I was 10, and then I went to the imperial capital for more than 10 years. Chapter 1530. This was a straightforward question. Have you talked about it? Of course they did, and they even got married. If it weren't for Li Jinan, they might still be married. But could he say that? No. For a moment, Yi Yu was at a loss for words. He smiled sheepishly and said, Auntie, I have. Qin Shuhua was a little disappointed when she heard that. She nodded and said, That's true. It's normal for a girl in her 20s to have a friend. But our Nan Nan has never been with another girl. All the kids in our family are like that. They're stubborn. Once they've decided on someone, they'll go all the way. If he's with you, it means that he wants to be with you forever. Yi Yu nodded and replied, I know what Nan is thinking. Even though she knew about it, she was still a little unsure of what to do. Their development seemed to be a little too fast. His mother came to see her now. Was she going to discuss marriage with her? Yi Yu felt a little mystified. After she replied, she became even more nervous. She instinctively looked inside and prayed that Li Jinan would come out soon. Seeing her reaction, Qin Shuhua smiled and said, It's good that you know. Actually, I'm not against young people dating, but if they want to date, they have to be serious about it. Don't you think so? What was the meaning of this? Afraid that she would be too timing and let down her son? Yi Yu cursed silently in her heart. On the surface, she had no choice but to agree. You're right, Auntie. Then how did you break up with your last boyfriend? What kind of questions were these? Yi Yu felt bitter in her heart, but she still thought about it, weighed her words and said, He has another woman. Qin Shuhua had already decided to interrogate Su Qingsang a long time ago, but now she was a little shaken. Although she sympathized with him, she actually felt a bit of schadenfreude in her heart. She said, That kind of person, it's good to forget him. How can you keep a relationship with such a man? It's better to break it off as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he cheats on you, it'll be even worse. This voice was eloquent, but the more one thought about it, the more terrified they became. Weren't these words indirectly asking about her first night? Yi Yu's hair stood on end. What a deep trap. Fortunately, she was quick-witted. Otherwise, she would have fallen into a trap. Yi Yu chuckled and replied, Yeah, it's a good thing I ended it early. Qin Shuhua was pleased. Just as she was about to speak again, she saw the look of surprise on Yi Yu's face. With one look, it was obvious that Li Jinan had arrived. Indeed, when she turned her head to look, she saw Li Jinan walking over unhurriedly. He naturally sat down beside Yi Yu and asked, What are you talking about? We women are just chatting. What are you doing here? Qin Shuhua glared at him. Did I come at the wrong time? Li Jinan chuckled. Mom, have you had breakfast? Not yet. When I came here, Lu Sa hadn't arrived yet. It took me almost half an hour to get here. I'll do it. Yi Yu immediately volunteered and said, Auntie, please take a seat. I'll make something simple. It won't take long. It's just that my skills aren't very good. Please forgive me. Regardless of whether his humble words were true or not, he managed to leave a good impression on Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua smiled and nodded her head. All right. Thank you, Yi Yu. Auntie, you're too kind. Yi Yu stood up and quickly turned around. She secretly let out a sigh of relief. How scary. That. Chapter 1531. Seeing that Yi Yu had left, Qin Shuhua's eyes were filled with satisfaction. She stood up and walked over to Li Jinan. After sitting down, she whispered, How long have you known Yi Yu? Quite a while. I've known her since last year. Li Jinan leaned against the back of the sofa. He looked a little sleepy. Qin Shuhua clapped her hands happily and exclaimed, You rascal! Why didn't you tell me? It's already been half a year. You've known each other for at least a year, haven't you? Li Jinan thought about it and did some calculations before replying, More or less. How long have you been together? Together? If they were officially together, it didn't seem to be that long. Half a month? A month? They had been living together for a month or 2 weeks. If he told Qin Shuhua about this, would she think that Yi Yu was being too casual? Li Jinan thought about it for a moment before replying, A few months. I can't remember. When did you start living together? Not too long. About half a month. Qin Shuhua's eyes turned into crescents as she said, That's great. That's great. My sons have grown up. Every one of them has a partner. That's great. As she spoke, she lowered her voice and asked, Have you done anything that only a married couple can do? Li Jinan suddenly felt a little awkward. He cleared his throat and said, Mom, aren't you being a little too direct with your words? What's the big deal? You're my son. But, judging from the way you're behaving, you probably have, right? Qin Shuhua's eyes were mischievous as she said, You're enlightened, young man. Sigh. Young people these days are so open-minded. When I was with your father, it wasn't like this at all. Now that the two of you are living together, you haven't even brought your parents home to meet them. Sigh. Qin Shuhua looked a little sad as she said, But that's good. At least you won't have to spend the rest of your life alone. This girl looks pretty good. Is she the one who cleans up the house? Does she hire a helper? No. She does everything. Recently she's been the one cooking. She rarely goes out to eat. Li Jinan looked very happy as he said, Her cooking is pretty good. It's even better than eating out. Try it later. All right. Qin Shuhua narrowed her eyes and said, I heard that you brought this girl to meet your grandfather. Since you brought her back to meet your grandfather, why didn't you bring her home for us to meet as well? She's shy. What's there to be shy about? We're going to meet sooner or later. Look, we're already here. Or could it be that the lady doesn't want to be with you, so she didn't want to see us? How could that be? If you don't want to, why would you live with me? It's good that you know what to do. But, since you really want to be with her, you can take some necessary measures, Qin Shuhua whispered. Do you know how to take safety measures? Mom, is it really appropriate for you to ask such a question? There's nothing bad about it. Even a woman like me can let go. Why are you a man so shy? Qin Shuhua laughed and said in a low voice, You're not young anymore. Get the girl pregnant first, then bring her home. Then you'll be responsible for her. After you marry her, she'll be yours. Mom, you've changed, Li Jinan said. That. Chapter 1532. To think that he had been so naive as to think that Qin Shuhua was a conservative, traditional woman. He hadn't expected her to be even more shameless than him when she said that. But it was true that she hadn't taken any precautions recently. That was indeed what he was thinking. He had also kept a close eye on Yu. She hadn't had a chance to go out and buy medicine. When Qin Shuhua heard what Li Jinan said, she rebuked, Mommy is doing this for your own good. You can't go wrong listening to Mommy. The moment she said that, she heard Yuyu's footsteps coming from inside. When Qin Shuhua heard that, she immediately shut her mouth and fell silent. Yuyu felt a little strange. She had just heard them chatting. Although she couldn't hear what they were saying, their voices hadn't stopped. Why was it so quiet the moment she arrived? Could it be that he was talking about her? Yuyu's heart raced, but she didn't say anything. She put down the breakfast in her hands and said, It's time to eat, Auntie. Li Jinan stood up and leaned over to ask, What did you make? As he spoke, he naturally reached his hand out and wrapped it around her waist. Yuyu immediately reacted and pushed him away. In a low voice she rebuked, Your mother is still here. Go away. Although her voice was soft, Qin Shuhua heard it clearly. She pretended not to see or hear anything and walked over to take a look at the breakfast she had prepared. It was a simple breakfast. A pot of porridge, a simple side dish divided into 3 portions, a poached egg and sausages. The side dish looked like a side dish, but Qin Shuhua couldn't quite put her finger on it. After washing her hands in the kitchen, Yu followed. After retrieving the bowls and chopsticks, she slowly filled the porridge. She scooped a bowl for each of them and naturally sat beside Li Jinan. She said, This is a specialty from my hometown. Try it. You probably can't get it in Kingstown. My father pickled it himself and I processed it a little. The dish was still warm. Qin Shuhua took a bite. Her eyes were filled with amazement. What is this? Yu couldn't quite put her finger on it. She replied, In my hometown it's called Yunhan. I don't know how to translate it in Mandarin. My father made it himself. It's said to be an ancestral skill. Qin Shuhua nodded and said, It is indeed delicious. He scooped a spoonful of porridge and tasted it. The porridge is cooked well and the eggs look good. Yu was a little embarrassed by the compliment. Her reaction to Qin Shuhua was a little unexpected. She had thought that the person Li Jinan said was difficult to deal with would definitely be difficult to deal with. She had been prepared to be scolded and despised. She hadn't expected that Yu would show no signs of it. This made her heave a sigh of relief. However, he did not dare to relax and said, Thank you, Auntie. If you like it, eat more. I made a lot. Okay, you eat too. Qin Shuhua was all smiles. After she finished eating, she sat down for a while and chatted with Yu about daily life. It was considered a form of familiarization before she reluctantly left. The driver, Xiao Qin, had been waiting for a long time. When he saw Qin Shuhua come out, He immediately walked over and opened the door. Qin Shuhua sat in the back seat and said, "Xiao Qin, help me look into Jinnan's girlfriend. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. She looks familiar." Chapter 1533. Xiao Qin hadn't seen Yi Yuyu. When he heard that, he glanced at her and replied, "I'm guessing it's a common face. There are too many people who look alike these days. Whenever a celebrity becomes popular, many people have plastic surgery. It's almost like a knockoff. That girl doesn't look like she's had plastic surgery. She's quite pretty. How does she compare to second young madam?" Qin Shuhua muttered to herself for a moment before replying, "There's no comparison. Chanxian looks like a child. Her face is small and her features are small. She looks young too. That girl looks quite good. One look and you can tell she's from China." Xiao Qin understood. Classic beauty? Not really, but it's pretty close. Her name is Yi Yuyu. She says she's from Yun Town. Do a check. Sure. Xiao Qin started the car. But that name is too common. There are many people with similar names. Yun Town is quite a big place. Her father's name is Yi Zhenhua, Qin Shuhua replied. All right, leave it to me. Shall we go back to the old manor now? No. Let's go to Mrs. Cheng's for a while. Okay. Yi Yuyu only breathed a sigh of relief when she saw the car drive away. When she turned her head, she saw Li Jinan sitting on the sofa. His eyes were closed and he looked very comfortable. Yi Yuyu walked over and asked, "Say, do you think your mother likes me a lot when she's like that?" "Yeah, she likes you a lot." Li Jinan stood up and pressed his forehead against hers. He hugged her and whispered, "Do you know what she told me just now?" Yi Yuyu looked up. Their noses were touching as she asked, "What is it?" "She asked me." Li Jinan lowered his head and planted a kiss on her lips. "What's done cannot be undone. Then I'll kidnap you home." Yi Yuyu chuckled and replied, "I didn't expect your mother to be so open-minded. I thought you said she was difficult to deal with and that she was a traditional old lady. I didn't expect your mother to be so easy to talk to." "Yeah, I didn't expect that either. But I think her idea wasn't bad." "Wasn't it already cooked? I don't think she'll take me home now." Yi Yuyu tried to push him away but he wouldn't budge. "Go away. I'll go clean up." "What's there to clean?" Li Jinan pressed his lips against the side of her face and said, "It's already cooked. Of course I have to eat it." Yi Yuyu had a bad feeling about this. As expected, Li Jinan captured her lips with his. With a turn of his body, the two of them fell onto the sofa together. Oh. Yi Yuyu was a little resistant. It was the middle of the day. It wasn't good. He didn't give her a chance to speak. In a husky voice he asked, "Yi Yuyu, how does it feel to be with me?" As he spoke, his hands didn't stop moving. He moved his hands up and down, lifted her skirt and explored the bottom of her skirt. Yi Yuyu's breathing grew heavy. She looked up to press his hand down and said, You're too lecherous, lust?" Li Jinan chuckled. His actions became more forceful as he pulled the fabric off her body. "This is called love." His voice was husky and deep. It was so magnetic that it made her shiver. Yi Yuyu hooked her thighs around his hips. Her eyes were misty. "Do you love me?" "This is love." Li Jinan pinned her down and pressed her into the depths of the sofa. His arms encircled her. One was masculine while the other was petite. As he lay on top of her, Li Jinan felt a sense of pride as a man. Chapter 1534. Marry me. Be the mother of my child. Li Jinan leaned close to her ear. His hot breath blew beside her ear, and his voice was so serious that she couldn't help but be intoxicated by it. His actions were gentle and his voice was gentle. "Do you want to marry me? Let's get married tomorrow." "Shenluo," Anne's voice seemed to ring out in her mind. His voice was slow and indifferent. There was no love, no warmth, no longing, and no tenderness when he proposed. Just like that, she got married to the man she had loved for a long time, the childhood sweetheart whom she had once regarded as her life. There was no wedding gown, no sacred vows. There was only a marriage certificate and a pair of rings that she had casually bought. Other than that, there was nothing between them. All right. Now, they each had a divorce certificate to prove that their marriage had failed and was unbearable to look back on. "I've already married you. What else do you want?" Yi Yuyu's eyes burned and her heart ached. Li Jinan's face was right in front of her as she hugged the man in front of her. His deep, almond-shaped eyes were gazing deeply at her. Li Jinan's eyes were unreadable. He reached out and gently stroked the ends of her hair. In a low voice he asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Yuyu shook her head. It was only a slight movement, but the tears in her eyes fell. Li Jinan gently kissed the tears away and said in a low voice, "If you're not ready, I'll wait a little longer." Yi Yu shook her head and hugged him even tighter. She asked, "Where's the ring?" Li Jinan was stunned. "What? You're asking me to marry you but you don't even have a ring? Aren't you being too stingy?" Yi Yu teased him. Her eyes were brimming with tears, but her face was smiling. It was as dazzling as a flower. Li Jinan was stunned for a moment. Then the smile on his face widened. Finally he laughed out loud and said, "I'll buy it now." Yi Yu hugged him and raised her head to kiss him on the lips. Gently, with salty tears, he gently teased. Li Jinan couldn't help himself. He pressed her down on the sofa and unleashed his crazy love. When the two of them were done, they had already woken up from their afternoon nap. Most of the day had passed. Li Jinan pulled her out of bed. After putting on his own clothes, he hurriedly drove to the nearby mall. This was not the first time he had entered a jewelry store, but it was the first time he had bought a ring. Yi Yu asked, "How about this?" "Yeah, it's nice," Li Jinan replied. "What about this?" "Not bad." "What about this?" "As long as you like it." Yi Yu was a little unhappy. "Why are you being so perfunctory?" Li Jinan looked at her and rubbed his head as he remarked, "The ones you've chosen are all pretty." The lady at the counter secretly laughed, which made Yi Yu even more unhappy. She put all the things she liked in a row together and said, "Pick one." There were 5 of them in the row, and each of them had a particularly beautiful design. Under the light from the counter, the diamonds shone especially brightly. Li Jinan looked around and felt that it was quite nice. He couldn't tell which one was nice and which one wasn't. When he saw that Yi Yu was showing signs of anger, he pretended to pick. He picked the one with the largest diamond and pointed to it. "This one." "Why?" "It's nice. It looks like you." Yi Yu's lips curled up and she said, "Then this one." That. Chapter 1535. After paying the bill, the two of them had dinner together. When Li Jinan got into his car, his mind was filled with thoughts. When does the Civil Affairs Bureau close? He looked at the time. It was already 5 p.m. Even if they didn't close, there would be a long line of people. Tomorrow is the weekend. What should I do? Li Jinan was distracted. His mind was a mess. Yi Yu reached out to touch him and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Li Jinan snapped out of his daze and asked, "Do you think we should get engaged first or just get married?" Yi Yu asked, "Are you thinking about that?" "Yeah." "Why don't we get our marriage certificate first?" Li Jinan's eyes turned into crescents. "Since we've been together for quite some time, getting our marriage certificate first is more or less the same. It's not even close." Yi Yu puffed up her cheeks and said, "Your mom doesn't know that I'm divorced yet. What if she finds out and doesn't agree to us being together?" "That's not a problem. We'll get our marriage certificate first. She won't be able to do anything about it then." "How can that be? Why not?" "It's fine." "If your mom asks us to get a divorce, will you do it?" "No." "Won't you listen to your mom?" "If I listen to my mom, I won't be able to get a wife. Why should I listen to her?" Yi Yu chuckled when she heard that. "Will your mom die of anger if she hears that?" "No, she won't. If she dies of anger just like that, my second brother's scandal alone is enough to kill her many times over." Li Jinan wasn't soft-hearted when it came to selling out his brother. "Don't worry. It's safe." Yi Yu didn't believe him, but she didn't have a better idea. She looked out into the distance. It was rush hour and cars were coming and going. After a moment of silence, Yi Yu said, "Shenluo, Anne's wedding is the day after tomorrow. Guan Kui sent me an invitation." Li Jinan raised his eyebrows and laughed. "You're that shameless? You sent an invitation to your ex-wife just like that?" "Yeah. I'm wondering if I should go." The smile on Li Jinan's face faded. He glanced at her sideways and asked, "Do you still have feelings for him?" Yi Yu laughed bitterly and looked out the window. "Would you believe me if I said I didn't?" Li Jinan was silent. He drove steadily, but he didn't feel comfortable. Yes, he wouldn't believe it. Childhood sweetheart, first love, ex-girlfriend, and even ex-husband. Perhaps all these relationships would make her unable to forget them. Even though her first night was given to him. Even though they were not husband and wife. But it was a fact that they had loved each other for so many years, how could they not feel anything? But since it was Shenluo, Anne's wedding, there was no harm in going. "Go." Li Jinan looked ahead without turning his head. "Go and let them see how you're doing. You'll be able to live a better life without him." "Yes, better." Li Jinan didn't dare to say anything else, but compared to Shenluo, and at least he was more like a human. Getting along with people was always better than getting along with animals. He continued, while you're at it, you can also pay that sister of yours a visit. Isn't she crazy? Now that she's married, don't tell me she's going crazy as well? Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Qianqian. Yi Yuyu didn't know, but Guan Kui's condition must have improved a lot for the wedding to be held. Especially when she thought about how blissfully Guan Kui had hugged her wedding gown in the hospital, Yi Yuyu's heart ached. Chapter 1536. August 3rd, cloudy, light rain. The weather wasn't great. I didn't go to homeschooling and slept at home. I didn't eat much, so I didn't vomit. Today was Shenluo, Anne's wedding. Everyone on WeChat was congratulating him. It was said that he was marrying his childhood sweetheart. He hasn't divorced Yi Yuyu for long, and he's already looking for his next wife. Haha, that bastard is even more inhumane than I thought. What's worse is that I want to give birth to his little bastard. When it's grown up, I'll take it home and tell him, look, your little bastard is back. That would be a wonderful scene. Shenluo, and I wish you a happy wedding and never a happy one. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The rain poured down. Outside the dark window it was gloomy. The dark clouds seemed to be pressing down on the top of one's head. The lights in the room weren't turned on. An orange-red flame flickered in the room. Young master, it's time. We should leave. Any later and it won't be good. Nanny Lu's urging voice could be heard again. Shenluo, and looked out the window at the pouring rain. He felt the same way. It was an indescribable pressure. Today was the day of his wedding. But Shenluo, and didn't feel that it was his wedding day. Such a day was like a noose around his neck. It tightened inch by inch, choking him until he couldn't breathe. Shenluo, and put out his cigarette and stood up. He picked up his suit jacket from the chair and walked out step by step. The crisp sound of his leather shoes sounded especially lonely in the quiet room where only the sound of the heavy rain could be heard. Shenluo, and is getting married again. When Yi Yuyu arrived, there were many familiar faces. Many of them were Shenluo, Anne's friends. When they saw Yi Yuyu, they were surprised. Especially when he saw Li Jinan, his shock was even more obvious. Isn't that the ex-sister-in-law? Why is she here? I think Shenluo, and or the bride called her. After all, the three of them grew up together. Who's the man next to the ex-sister-in-law? That guy looks familiar. Did he appear in a magazine before? Of course. He was last year's richest bachelor of the year. His surname is Li. His name is Li Jinan. Li Jinan? People from Kingstown? Li Xiqing's younger brother? Yes, it's him. The discussions around them did not affect the two people who were walking side by side. Li Jinan looked around and saw a few familiar faces. He nodded at them as a form of greeting before following Yi Yuyu into the building. The bridesmaids looked very strong. Yi Yuyu didn't know any of them. Guan Kui had been in the hospital for so long. How could she have gotten to know so many people? The girls were probably hired with money. They were all very pretty and all of them wore heavy makeup. There was still a gap between them and their circle. Wow, that Li Jinan sure is brave. He actually dared to come with his sister-in-law? Ha ha ha. I reckon that the news of Li Jinan picking up used shoes will be exposed by the media tomorrow. Deske, what a heavy taste. Does he know how Yi Yuyu was violated by Shenluo, and? That's simply not treating them as humans. Shu, don't talk nonsense. You'll die when Luo and comes out. Chapter 1537. As the two main characters in the conversation, they had no idea that they were being discussed in such a manner. Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu sat at the side chatting. They didn't seem to notice the commotion around them. A young and slender woman walked over. Her features bore a striking resemblance to Yi Yuyu's. When Li Jinan saw her walk over, he recognized her immediately. She must be Yi Yuyu's mother. He nudged Yi Yuyu lightly and called out, "Behind you." Yi Yuyu turned her head and saw Yi Tian immediately. Yi Tian was dressed exquisitely. She wore a black gown that fitted her figure perfectly. She exuded an aura of elegance and nobility. This was the aura that she had developed after living with Guan Yanhong. This was something that she had never possessed while she was with Yi Zhenhua. Money, wealth, aura, elegance. When Yi Yuyu looked at Yi Tian, the first thing that came to her mind was the bright rose in her home in Yun Town. It was fiery red with prickly thorns. But Yi Zhenhua had continued to love it without any hesitation. It had been like this for decades. You're here. Yi Tian smiled gracefully. When Kui sees you, he'll be very happy. Yi Yuyu forced a smile and replied, "Is that so? That's good." Yi Tian's expression remained impassive. She looked at Li Jinan and asked, "And this is?" "My fiancé." Yi Yuyu looked directly at Yi Tian and replied, his name is Li Jinan. Fiancé? Yi Tian's brows creased together as she asked, when did you get a fiancé? You only divorced Shen Luo, and not long ago, and you already have a fiancé? When Yi Yuyu heard that, she was amused and replied, how long has it been since I divorced Shen Luo Han? He even married your other daughter at that time. Why is it that he can get married but I can't have a fiancé? How is that the same? Yi Tian exclaimed. You're a girl. People will say that you're a loose woman if you behave like this. Oh. Realization dawned on Yi Yuyu's face. She looked at Yi Yuyu with a faint smile. She had a hint of Li Jinan's charm as she said, if I'm a fickle woman, then you took your daughter and ran off with another man. Does that count as promiscuous? When Yi Tian heard that, she couldn't contain her anger. Her face turned red with anger. She raised her hand and aimed it at Yi Yuyu's face. However, before it could fall, it was grabbed by a large hand. Li Jinan's eyes were cold as he looked at Yi Tian and said, Mrs. Guan, please conduct yourself with dignity. Yi Tian was taken aback. She became even angrier as she glared at Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu continued to sit there calmly. She raised her head to look at her. Her eyes seemed to contain a hint of provocation. Do you know who I am? I'm Yi Yuyu's mother. Yi Tian retracted her hand and said angrily, how could I not know anything about marriage? Fiancé? What kind of fiancé is that? I don't agree. Does it count if you say it? Yi Yuyu stood up. Her eyes were calm. Don't flatter yourself. Didn't you already make your decision a long time ago? Guan Kui is your daughter, and Guan Yanhong is your husband. You're a family. I'm just an outsider. That's how I've been all these years, hasn't it? Chapter 1538. Yi Yuyu looked a little surprised. She raised her eyebrows and asked, have I changed? Why didn't I know? Yi Tian felt a little sad. She looked at Yi Yuyu and said, Yi Yuyu, no one blamed you for what happened back then. Kui is all right now. I'll plead with your father to let you come home. Let's go back to how things used to be, all right? You're still my daughter. Don't go against me anymore. I'm really sad to see you like this. Yi Yuyu snorted. She felt that Yi Yuyu's expression was hypocritical to the extreme. Back then, Yi Yuyu had been the one who had accused her of framing Guan Kui and crippling her. All these years, she and Guan Yanhong had given so many looks and scorn that they probably didn't even realize it. Now, that expression and that look on her face were as if she was really looking at her daughter. However, Yi Yuyu didn't believe it. She didn't want to and she didn't dare to. Mommy. A voice rang out. It was Guan Kui's voice. She sounded overjoyed. Surrounded by many people, she was dressed in a beautiful wedding gown and was the center of attention. Guan Kui had always been pretty. With her makeup, many people turned to look at her. Her beautiful wedding gown was long and floor-length. Because Guan Kui's health wasn't good, Guan Yanhong hadn't bothered with her. He had held the wedding at his own hotel. Everything had been handled by the Guan family. The Shen family hadn't done much. Guan Kui was in excellent condition that day. She was like a little bird as she pushed her wheelchair out. She moved quickly and her smile was bright and radiant. Mommy, I've been looking for you for a long time. So you're here. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Yuyu as if she had just noticed her presence. Yi Yuyu, you're here too. That's great. I'm so happy that you could come. Thank you. She looked at the man beside her and said, this must be the person Shen Luo and mentioned. Yi Yuyu's new lover. Guan Kui was all smiles as she replied, I heard that you were together with Shen Luo, and before you divorced him. Now you're getting married, aren't you? Congratulations. Those words made the people who had been paying attention to Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan look at them with a strange expression. He looked down at Guan Kui and said, thank you for your concern, Miss Guan. It's all thanks to you. If it weren't for your interference, I wouldn't have been able to win the heart of a beauty. Yi Yuyu was a little embarrassed. Li Jinan stepped forward at that moment and stood in front of her. Guan Kui's smile froze. Yi Tian stepped in to smooth things over and asked, why did you come looking for me? Where's your father? Dad is inside waiting for Luo. When Luo comes, our wedding can be held as scheduled. Guan Kui smiled blissfully. She looked at Yi Yuyu and said, Yi Yuyu, thank you for coming. I have something to tell you. Can you speak to me in private? A few words in private? The relationship between Guan Kui and Yi Yuyu wasn't that good, was it? Li Jinan felt that something was amiss. He tugged at Yi Yuyu and asked, are you hungry? Yi Yuyu could tell what was on Li Jinan's mind. It was highly likely that he didn't want her to be alone with Guan Kui. She reached out to gently push his hand away and replied, I'm not hungry. With that, she looked at Guan Kui. What do you want to say? You can say it now. I want to apologize to you, Guan Kui said with a sincere expression. Guan Kui's face was full of sincerity as she said, I wanted to speak to you in private to apologize. Also, there's something more important. Chapter 1539. Something more important, an apology. Something more important. What could it be? Was her apology related to what had happened all those years ago? Or was it related to the snatching away of her love? Or could it be something else? Yi Yu's curiosity was piqued when she heard that. You, can you give me a chance? I really want to apologize to you in person. Guan Kui looked at her with sincerity in her eyes. Yi Tian looked at Yi Yu and said, You, big sister is talking to you. So many years have passed and you've been in a cold war for a long time. Can't you be more sensible? Don't make mommy and big sister worry about you. Yi Yu laughed when she heard Yi Tian's words and asked, Have you really treated me as your daughter? Yi Tian was a little annoyed when she heard that. How could you say something like that? You hurt mommy's heart. Yi Yu couldn't be bothered with her anymore. She looked at Guan Kui and said, Fine. I promise to talk to you in private. Guan Kui smiled gratefully and said, Thank you, Yu. Come with me. As she spoke, Guan Kui steered the wheelchair toward the bridal room that she had always been in. Yi Yu followed her in. Guan Kui waited by the side. She watched Yi Yu enter before closing the door. The closing of the door blocked out all the noise outside. At that moment, only the two of them were left in the room. Yi Yu didn't give her a friendly look and asked, What do you want to say? Hurry up and finish. I'm leaving. Guan Kui didn't seem to mind and replied, I have a lot to say. I'm just afraid you won't want to hear it. Her smile widened. The sweet and blissful smile that she had displayed in front of others was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, her smile seemed unfriendly and sinister. It made one feel uncomfortable. Guan Kui's wheelchair stopped behind the door. She looked at Yi Yu and suddenly moved. Her body slowly rose. Yi Yu looked at her in disbelief and asked, Your leg has recovered? Guan Kui's smile became even more radiant. I like that expression on your face. You look like an idiot. Did you really think that I was crippled? With that, she walked toward Yi Yu. It was obvious that her steps weren't steady. It was obvious that she was straining herself. Do you really think that I will never recover in this life? Ah. Guan Kui looked at her. That's what everyone thinks. Even Shen Luo, and thinks. If I'd known, I wouldn't have kept it a secret. That way Shen Luo, and wouldn't have run away from the wedding. It was another bombshell. Yi Yu was shocked. Running away from marriage? Don't play dumb. Didn't you already know that he would do such a thing? He never wanted me. You know that. That's why you divorced him so decisively. Do you think I don't know that? As Guan Kui spoke, her eyes widened. Her body trembled slightly as she said, You know that even after the divorce he still can't forget you. He still loves you, right? Guan Kui's expression was indescribably ferocious. Yi Yu instinctively took a step back. She looked at her and said, I don't know. If this is your so-called apology, then I know it. I don't want to accept it. Get out of my way. Chapter 1540. Yi Yu was caught off guard. With Guan Kui's push, her body immediately fell backward. Her whole body fell backward. Behind her was a large vanity table. The moment she fell, there was a loud clattering sound. The commotion was so loud that Yi Yu was in a daze. When the people outside heard the series of sounds, they finally became alert. Someone knocked on the door. Who's inside? When she heard the voice, Yi Yu opened her eyes. She realized that Guan Kui wasn't in a much better state. Guan Kui was wearing a beautiful and elegant wedding gown. She was lying on the floor, glaring at Yi Yu. His eyes were red as if they were filled with blood. Yi Yu was shocked by her sudden appearance. She instinctively shrank back. This kind of person is so scary. When she saw someone like that, Yi Yu immediately thought of the word crazy. Guan Kui stared at her and suddenly broke into a smile. That smile was indescribably sinister. It sent shivers down one's spine. She slowly climbed to her feet. Her legs were clearly not used to standing. They trembled as she walked to the other side. She took out a yellow cartoon quilt. On it was the face of a Kelda duck. It was squinting in an unknown direction and smiling eerily. Help me open it. Guan Kui walked over to Yi Yu and handed the cup to her. I don't have any strength. I'm thirsty. Yi Yu shrank back and crawled up from the floor with great difficulty. She looked at Guan Kui and didn't dare approach her. This person is crazy. If such a person were to be killed at this moment, she wouldn't be sentenced. She's crazy. Crazy people don't have to bear legal responsibility when they commit crimes. Yu knew that very well. She felt that something was wrong. Someone was shaking the doorknob outside and yelling, "Who's inside? Did something happen?" The door had been locked from the inside. The person outside couldn't open it without the key. Guan Kui didn't seem to notice the commotion behind her. She handed the cup of kelda duck to Yu and said, "You help me open it." Just like before. Yu looked at Guan Kui. Her heart was in turmoil. In the past, before Guan Kui's accident, Guan Kui would always hand her the drink she bought. She would giggle and say, "Goddess of strength, help me open it." It was only natural. They were all smiles and there was no gap between them. But since when did it start to change? Ever since, what happened to Guan Kui? No, even earlier, much earlier. Yu looked at Guan Kui but she didn't dare take the bottle. She asked, "This bottle is very easy to open. Why do you want me to open it?" "This is the bottle that Luo and gave me." Guan Kui smiled brightly. He said that he wanted me to smile even brighter. Many a time when I smile I look just like this duck. It's very cute. Guan Kui's face softened at the mention of Shen Luo but she quickly regained her composure. She looked at Yu and said, "But I know that the person he loves in his heart is you, Yu." Yu laughed when she heard that. However, this smile was filled with bitterness. "Guan Kui, you're overthinking things. I've already married you. What else do you want?" If he loved her, he would not have said such words. Chapter 1541. He hated her for pushing Guan Kui off the stage, even though she hadn't done it. But, when everyone was pointing fingers and everyone was certain that it was the truth, no matter what Yu said, how she explained, and how she repented, Shen Luo believed her without a doubt. Once Shen Luo made up his mind, it was difficult to change it no matter what. Yu knew that no matter how much she resented and hated him, she was powerless to change anything. That feeling of helplessness persisted for a long time. Even now, Yu still hadn't considered whether Shen Luo still liked her or loved her. After so many years, the extravagant hopes of the past had vanished into thin air. When Guan Kui heard Yu's words, she stared at her. After a long time she suddenly laughed. "Yu, sometimes I really pity you." "What do you mean?" "All these years Shen Luo has been by your side. God knows how much I envy you, but you've wasted all that time. If it were me, I would have used those 7 or 8 years to keep him in my clutches." Guan Kui's face was a mixture of regret, relief and schadenfreude. "It's all because of me that you're in this state." Ahaha. Yu's lips pursed tightly. Her emotions were complicated. Yu should have berated Guan Kui for being a mistress, a despicable person and a shameless person. After playing the fool a few years ago, Guan Kui had planted a thorn in their hearts that was difficult to pull out. It had caused the distance between them to grow further and further apart. Every time she got close, she would be viciously stabbed. All these years, her life had been very difficult. Everything had been caused by Guan Kui. Yet, on such an important occasion, Shen Luo had escaped. Guan Kui's laughter grew louder and louder. Tears streamed down her face. "Yu, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The exquisite makeup on her face was stained by her tears. Her cries grew louder and louder. The pure white wedding dress fell to the ground. The bottle in Guan Kui's hand fell to the ground with a dull thud. Kelda Duck's yellow bottle bounced a few times and rolled to Yu's feet. Guan Kui squatted down and wailed uncontrollably. "I'm so jealous of you. I'm so jealous." Guan Kui buried his face between his legs. His muffled voice was filled with sorrow and desolation. The bride, who was supposed to be smiling and happily accepting everyone's blessings, was now crying helplessly in the room. Yu felt her heart wrench. She looked at her with her lips tightly pursed. She lowered her eyes and looked at the cute Kelda Duck water bottle on the ground. Squatting down, he picked up the cup and opened the lid. It was full of water. She took 2 steps forward and squatted down. She reached out her hand and gently said, "Everything will pass." Shen Luo left today because he was irresponsible. This kind of man can't give you a future and he's not worthy of your love. Guan Kui buried her head in her hands. Her sobs gradually died down. She raised her head and looked at Yu. Yu held the glass of water in her hand. Her eyes were filled with sympathy as she said, "We all deserve better." She gently pushed the glass of water forward. Her expression was the same as ever. When Guan Kui had lost the dance competition and was crying in her room, Yu had done the same thing. She had comforted her by her side. Chapter 1542. It had a cute design and a funny pair of eyes that seemed to be laughing at her. Guan Kuei reached out and took the glass from her. She suddenly smiled and said, "It's still open. Thank you, Yi Yu." Yi Yu didn't know how to react. She instinctively looked at the glass in front of her. "Is still open? What does that mean?" Without waiting for Yi Yu to react, Guan Kuei raised the glass and started drinking. She drank the water a little too quickly. Droplets of water flowed down her chin and onto Guan Kuei's collarbone. Guan Kuei's wedding gown seeped deep into her skin. Yi Yu squatted in front of Guan Kuei. She could clearly hear the gurgling sound coming from her throat. Guan Kuei gulped water down her throat. The droplets of water from the corners of her eyes kept flowing down. Guan Kuei tossed the cup aside and wiped her chin forcefully. She said, "Do you know how much I envy you? Ever since I was young, I've always strived to do my best in everything. My father always hoped that I would be stronger than most people, but I lost my mother when I was young." Yi Yu's eyes widened. As Guan Kuei spoke, she stumbled to her feet and said, "It's said that my mother died during childbirth when she was giving birth to me. In this world, I'm Daddy's only family. I'm his only flesh and blood. That's why he has high expectations of me. It's so high that I don't even have time for myself. It's impossible for me to do what I like." Yi Yu looked at her and slowly stood up. She gently said, "You did it, Kuei. You're outstanding." "So what? I'm outstanding, but the person I like doesn't like me at all. I grew up with Shenluo, but he can get along with you so well. From the moment you appeared, all his attention was on you. Regardless of whether you were in primary or secondary school, everyone knew that you were the best of friends. As for me, I'm nothing more than a genius who relied on hard work to gain everyone's approval." Yi Yu looked at her with a complicated expression. Her heart was filled with sorrow. Guan Kuei was actually jealous of me. Before I entered university, I always thought that Shenluo and I were the most compatible, but he made such a wish on his birthday. Do you still remember what he wished for?" Yi Yu didn't say a word. She remembered, of course she remembered. "I want to be with Yi Yu. I want Yi Yu to be my girlfriend." This birthday wish was said in front of all his friends and also in front of all their friends. At that time there was a burst of cheers and jeers. Yi Yu blushed and ran out. He immediately caught up with her, hugged her and kissed her in the dark. Everything seemed to happen naturally. Without any deliberate announcement, the two of them were together as it should be. However, something like that happened later on. "Everyone knows that you two are a match made in heaven. I can only smile and wish you well. I can't show any unhappiness." Guan Kuei laughed. She had a sickly, deranged look on her face. "Heaven knows. I'm so jealous of you that I'm about to go crazy. I really hope that every time the two of you hug each other, you get run over by a car or struck by lightning." Chapter 1543. Fortunately, my chance came. Guan Kuei smiled as she slowly backed away. "You organized an adventure in the wilderness. I knew very well how bad the environment in the mountains was. I knew that you wouldn't be able to take it, so I deliberately brought you up the mountain." Guan Kuei's eyes were filled with schadenfreude. "I didn't expect it to suddenly rain." Yi Yu had already known about it, but hearing it from Guan Kuei's own mouth still shocked her. She looked at Guan Kuei in disbelief and said, "You were only 20 years old at that time. I didn't know it would rain, but I did it on purpose." Guan Kuei laughed wickedly. "I purposely walked behind so that Shenluo could settle down the others so that I could drag you down with me." Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Guan Kuei as though she was a lunatic. "You're crazy." "Shoo." Guan Kuei placed a finger to her lips and said, "Don't say that. I just did something that none of you could imagine." Her eyes turned into crescents as she looked at Yi Yu and said, "I didn't expect that after so many years, this incident would still have such an impact." Guan Kuei's footsteps gradually backed away. Her footsteps were slow and her legs were trembling. She stood unsteadily. Yi Yu looked at her appearance and felt extremely sorrowful. She looked at her legs, which were covered by the wedding gown, with pity and asked, "Is it worth it now?" Guan Kuei's legs, which she had once been most proud of, were now completely crippled. In this lifetime, Guan Kuei's dance would probably be difficult to pick up again. "You set me up and I'm still standing here, safe and sound. But you lost more than just a pair of legs." Her life, which was supposed to be brilliant and glorious, had been destroyed by a single thought of hers all those years ago. The good thing was that she could still walk. Everything wasn't too bad. "Guan Kuei, what happened in the past is in the past. I don't want to pursue it." Yi Yu looked at her and said, "Now that things have come to this, the damage has already been done. I won't feel anything even if you tell me these things now. Yi Yu took a step forward and said, "Forget about it. We all deserve a better life." As she spoke, she looked down at Guan Kui's legs and said softly, "If you do your rehabilitation well, you might be able to stand up again and walk normally. As for Shen Luo, and if he's not suitable, he's not suitable. No matter how much you force him, he won't be able to stay." Guan Kui cracked a smile, revealing a row of bright red teeth. When Yi Yu saw it, she was shocked. Blood trickled down the corner of Guan Kui's mouth. His eyes, which were already somewhat bloodshot, suddenly became bright red and glistening. Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. Her hair stood on end. Guan Kui laughed out loud and replied, "You're still as hypocritical as ever. But I still have to thank you. Some things were destined not to end well from the very beginning. I was already prepared for the worst. Everything that you owe me, it's about time that you return it to me." Yi Yu, as he spoke, he turned around and unlocked the door. Then his body fell heavily to the ground. He fell to the ground, blood spurting out of his mouth and splashing onto the ground. Ah! A scream pierced through the bustling hustle and bustle. Chapter 1544. Guan Kui's sudden collapse didn't affect the guests and service staff the most. It affected Yi Yu the most. Yi Yu stood behind the door. The hair on her body stood on end. It was as if all the blood in her body had flowed backward. She stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do. The sound of frantic footsteps grew louder. Many people had gathered around her. Guan Kui was lying on the ground. Fresh blood flowed from her mouth. Her face was pale and gray. Guan Yanhong had heard the commotion from afar. He sprinted over. After parting the crowd, he saw Guan Kui lying on the ground. His daughter, whom he had painstakingly nurtured, was now lying on the ground in such a state, under such a scene. Guan Yanhong's emotions broke down. His eyes were bloodshot. He rushed forward and squatted beside Guan Kui. He helped her up and said, "Kui." Guan Kui's face was pale. Her face was ashen. Her eyes were clouded by darkness. She looked up at Guan Yanhong and said, "Daddy? Yi Yu wants to kill me?" Her words were choppy, but they were clear. When Yi Yu heard that, she felt a chill run through her body. From the bottom of her heart to the top of her body, she retorted, "I didn't." It was clear that her words were powerless at a time like this. "Daddy?" Before Guan Kui could finish her sentence, she coughed violently and spat out a mouthful of dark purple blood. It splattered on the ground and landed on Guan Yanhong's body. The warmth from it was enough to destroy a father's rationality. Guan Yanhong hugged Guan Kui and burst into tears. He yelled, "Help! Call an ambulance! Save my daughter!" Guan Yanhong cried out. His tears and snot were stuck together. With great difficulty, he picked up his daughter and yelled, "Help me! Help me drive. Xiao Guan, this way. My driver is downstairs. We'll leave immediately." A burly man came forward and took Guan Kui. In no time they ran toward the emergency exit. There was a commotion in the surroundings. More and more people gathered to watch. More and more people were pointing and gossiping. By the time Yi Tian ran over, the scene was already surrounded by a crowd. Panting heavily, he found it hard to believe that Guan Kui was in such a state. Guan Yanhong followed closely behind. When he saw Yi Tian, he was furious. Through gritted teeth, he exclaimed, "Your daughter has harmed my daughter once again. Yi Tian, I really regret bringing you home. You're a jinx." As he spoke, he followed closely behind the burly man and ran down with large strides. Guan Yanhong's words caused everyone to look at each other in dismay. Everyone began to point fingers at Yi Tian. Yi Tian stood rooted to the ground, panting. She found it hard to believe that Guan Yanhong would say something like that. His heart was in pain. The feelings he had built up over the past dozen years seemed especially thin at this moment. It was as if a light tap would shatter his bones. And the one who was knocking on this thin piece of paper was her daughter. Yi Yu stood rooted to the ground. Her face was as white as a sheet. Her body was cold and her limbs were weak. When she saw Yi Tian, she felt as if she had found someone to rely on. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stammered, "Mom, but..." Chapter 1545. Yi Tian glared at Yi Yu with red eyes. Her breathing quickened as she yelled at Yi Yu, "How could you be so vicious? Kui is already in such a state. What threat does she pose to you? How could you want to kill her like that? You're a jinx." Yi Tian had directed Guan Yanhong's words at Yi Yu. Jinx, jinx. These three words reverberated in everyone's ears. Yi Yu covered her face. The tears in her eyes rolled down her cheeks as she looked at Yi Tian. Suddenly she smiled. There was sorrow and desolation in her smile. It was a look of despair that made one's heart ache. Looking at Yi Tian, Yi Yuyu raised her hand and used all the strength in her body to return a vicious slap to Yi Tian. No one had expected such a turn of events. The crowd was in an uproar. Isn't that her mother? Oh my god. Is that mother and daughter fighting each other? Yi Tian had not expected Yi Yuyu to do such a thing. She looked at her in disbelief. She quickly regained her composure and roared, "Do you know what you've done? I'm your mother." As Yi Tian screamed, she raised her hand and swung it at Yi Yuyu's face. Before the slap could land, it was blocked by a large hand. The slap landed squarely on a sturdy arm. Li Jinan pushed Yi Tian. Caught off guard, Yi Tian stumbled back a few steps. Yi Yuyu was on the verge of breaking down. When she saw Li Jinan, she wailed loudly. She threw herself into his embrace and yelled, "I didn't. It wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Believe me, it wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me." Yi Yuyu's words were laced with helplessness and desolation. Li Jinan's expression was tense. He pulled her into his embrace and said, "I believe you. Don't cry. I'm here. I'm here." Yi Yuyu's heart calmed down. She looked up and cried even harder. She asked me to boil the water. At first I didn't dare help her, but she couldn't hold it properly. The water dropped. After she drank it, she started vomiting blood. It wasn't my fault. It was her own fault. This explanation was so baffling that no one around could understand what was going on. Li Jinan didn't quite understand what she was saying, but he didn't say anything. He held her in his arms and said, "Don't be afraid. I'll prove your innocence. Guan Kui is already in such a state. There's only you and her in the room. Now that she's been sent to the hospital by your father, we don't even know if she's dead or alive. How dare you collude with outsiders to beat me up? Yi Yuyu, I really didn't expect you to be so despicable. You're exactly the same as your dead father." Yi Tian gritted her teeth and roared. By doing so, Yi Yuyu had already been convicted. But isn't that Yi Yuyu's mother? Not only did he beat her indiscriminately, but the words he had just uttered were enough to kill Yi Yuyu. While he was shocked, he was also furious. When she saw Yi Tian raise her hand to slap Yi Yuyu, the rage she felt was about to burst out of her chest. She wanted nothing more than to strangle her to death in front of everyone. However, he could not. The current situation was too disadvantageous for Yi Yuyu. He couldn't do anything. Any one of those incidents could be used to frame Yi Yuyu. He turned his head. His sharp, almond-shaped eyes seemed to be coated with frost. Chapter 1546. I've wondered more than once whether you're Guan Kui's biological mother or Yi Yuyu's biological mother. Li Jinan looked at her coldly. There was no softness in his expression. Yi Tian stood and looked at Li Jinan confidently as she said, "I'm Yi Yuyu's mother, but I know what's good and what's bad. I'm on the side of reason, not the side of family." "What is reason? What is family?" Li Jinan's expression darkened. "You abandoned your family for money and that's family? You indiscriminately slapped your own daughter and that's reason? What a joke." Yi Tian was incensed by his words and retorted, "What has that got to do with you? Who do you think you are? Yi Yuyu is my daughter. I can discipline her however I want. Who are you to interfere? Furthermore, she was indeed in the wrong. As a mother, shouldn't I slap her? Don't make it sound so righteous." Yi Yuyu roared. Her face was red as she glared at Yi Tian. She wiped her face forcefully and said, "You stood at the top of the public's opinion and condemned the person that everyone blamed. They said that Yi Yuyu pushed Guan Kui off the cliff, and you slapped me and chased me out of the house. You didn't even give me a chance to explain myself and accused me of the crime. Did it ever cross your mind that I was your daughter at that time? You left of your own accord. No one chased you away." Yi Tian said matter-of-factly. "Don't you dare accuse me now. What happened all those years ago was your fault. You harmed Kui's legs. She danced so well back then, but now she can't even stand. The source of this tragedy is you, Yi Yuyu." "No!" Yi Yuyu screamed. "It wasn't me at all. Guan Kui fell on her own. She wanted to frame me, but she didn't dare to go through the legal process. She could only put herself in a weak position so that everyone could criticize me on a moral level. I would never do something like that. Yi Yuyu, you're my daughter. I know you best." Yi Tian looked at Yi Yuyu and said, "You weren't that kind of person in the past, but you've changed completely." "Ah!" Yi Yuyu was even more enraged. Her face was flushed with anger, but her tears were gone. She yelled, "It's like this every time. You want to be a good stepmother, and a good wife. Don't take me for a fool. You pushed me out in exchange for a stable position in the Guan family. You're afraid of living a poor life, so you're especially afraid of losing everything. Yi Tian hadn't expected Yi Yuyu to suddenly say something like that. The truth that she had been hiding all this while had been exposed in an instant. It was as if a bloody scab had been peeled off, and blood flowed freely. More than a decade ago, you abandoned your husband with a child, but Yi Jinhua has not forgotten you even after so many years. There is still someone waiting for you in Cloud Town. Yi Yuyu laughed sarcastically. But, from the looks of it, you're a heartless woman. You're not worthy of Yi Jianhua at all. Yi Yuyu? Yi Tian roared in anger. She could feel the gazes of the people around her. Her face burned. I'm your mother. Yi Tian's words caused a commotion in the crowd. The crowd parted and more than a dozen police officers walked in. The leader looked around and asked, Who is Yi Yuyu? When Yi Yuyu saw that, her body trembled. Chapter 1547. Yi Yuyu raised her head slightly and was caught off guard by a pair of deep, dark eyes. However, there was an indescribable coldness in his eyes. The coldness was directed at Yi Tian. Yi Yuyu sniffed and wrapped her arms around his waist. In a soft, choked voice she said, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I believe you, but you still have to go with them. I'll think of a way to get you out and clear your name, Li Jinan said as he held her in his arms. It's just a small episode. When you think back on it in the future, you'll find life to be very interesting. So don't be afraid. There's no need to be afraid. An upright person isn't afraid of a crooked shadow. Yi Yuyu wiped away her tears and nodded her head. The police officer asked again, Who is Yi Yuyu? She is. Yi Tian pointed at Yi Yuyu and asked, May I ask who called the police? When the police officer saw Yi Tian, he only glanced at her briefly before quickly coming forward to look at Yi Yuyu. Very quickly, a few police officers came forward and surrounded Yi Yuyu. A few more people walked into the room where Guan Kui had just met with a mishap. The leader of the police officers said to Yi Yuyu, It was Mr. Guan Yanhong who called the police. At present, we suspect that Miss Yi Yuyu is trying to kill his daughter, Miss Guan Kui. Furthermore, there is a clear motive for the crime and evidence of the crime. Miss Guan Kui is currently in the emergency room and has lost all signs of life. The situation is very serious. Miss Yi Yuyu, please come with us. Guan Kui's life is in danger? That can't be. Is that serious? But Yi Yuyu doesn't look like that kind of person. No one would look like that kind of person. Only Yi Yuyu and Guan Kui were in the room where Guan Kui met with a mishap. Now that Guan Kui is in such a state, who else could it be if not Yi Yuyu? The commotion around them grew louder. Yi Yuyu felt the blood coursing through her veins as she said, It wasn't me. I didn't. There was an uproar. There were only the two of you in the room. If it wasn't you, could it have been her? It's her. It's her. Yi Yuyu shouted. When she said that, everyone around her scoffed. Today is Guan Kui's wedding day. Do you think she'll commit suicide and blame it on you? That's right. She's a bride today, the happiest moment of her life. You must be jealous of her, so you hurt her. No. If it's not me, you can investigate. The innocent will be innocent and the turbid will be turbid. If I don't have it, then I don't. Yi Yuyu was on the verge of breaking down. Her voice was laced with grievance. She tried to explain herself hysterically, but she didn't gain the slightest bit of trust. The surrounding people looked at her with deep disbelief. This scene was the same as 7 or 8 years ago. She had explained it to everyone, but everyone had different expressions. He looked at her as if he were looking at a criminal. His gaze made Yi Yuyu feel pain and despair. The feeling from 7 or 8 years ago returned to her. She felt a chill run down her spine and her body trembled. Chapter 1548. With that one sentence, the surrounding people all quietened down at the same time. They looked around and looked at each other in dismay. They had indeed seen the groom in America. As one of the main characters, Shen Luo, and hadn't been there. Even when the bride had been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment, he hadn't shown up. Something was wrong. It's hard to say whether or not it was a suicide. We still need to investigate further, but Miss Yi needs to come with us now, the leader of the police officers said. Another police officer stepped forward to handcuff Yi Yuyu and said, If Miss Guan's life can be saved, everything else can be discussed. Please go. Seal off the scene and disperse the crowd. Yes, sir. Yi Yuyu's hands were cuffed with cold handcuffs. The unfamiliar feeling went straight to the bottom of her heart. She turned her head helplessly to look at Li Jinan. Li Jinan looked back at her and nodded his head silently. He mouthed, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." Yi Yu turned her head back. Her heart was racing and her body was still trembling. How could I not be afraid? Guan Kui had drunk that glass of water and vomited blood. Had she planned to commit suicide all along so that she could frame me? Or perhaps Guan Kui was just trying to hurt herself so that everyone would condemn me and that I would no longer have a place in this world. If the investigation was true, the crime would be established. If nothing happened to Guan Kui, she would be guilty of intentional injury, intentional murder, and attempted murder. If something happened to Guan Kui, it would be considered intentional murder. She would be sentenced to life imprisonment or even death. At that thought, Yi Yu bit down on her lip and sobbed softly. It wasn't me. I didn't want to harm her. It was her own fault. Don't worry. We're still investigating. If you're innocent, we'll definitely clear your name. Yes, the innocent will be innocent and the guilty will be innocent. In any case, she was now a suspect. Since the police had been mobilized, they would definitely clear her name. Definitely. Definitely. Yi Yu was taken into the police car. Li Jinan followed closely behind. When they arrived at the police station, Yi Yu was taken into custody. All her belongings were confiscated. Li Jinan couldn't even see her face. His heart was heavy. This was the capital. He had been retired for several years. At present, he had no say in this situation. He picked up his phone and called Li Beixing. The call was quickly answered. Hello. Does my brother miss me? Li Beixing seemed to be in a good mood. Li Jinan gave him a simple explanation of the situation, and Li Beixing's carefree attitude disappeared completely. Are you sure she's innocent? I'm very sure. She wouldn't have the heart to do something like that. At the same time, Li Jinan felt a little helpless. At the same time, he blamed himself. It's my fault. I thought that since it's her wedding day, she would definitely stop. Everyone knew that Guan Kui and Shen Luo and had gone through a lot to get together. At the very least, they couldn't ruin their own wedding, could they? It was obvious that he had underestimated Guan Kui and overestimated Yi Yu. Chapter 1549. Thank you, big brother. Li Jinan rubbed his eyes and sighed. Li Beixing sensed Li Jinan's emotions and consoled him. Don't worry. As long as she didn't do such a thing, nothing will happen to her. You were right not to be impulsive. This matter can be big, but it can also be small. First, you have to be calm before you can act. Yeah. Li Jinan understood that, but he still couldn't get rid of the pain in his heart. How long have you been with this girl? Li Beixing's tone was solemn as he asked. Everything was fine. Why would that person target her? I don't want to say anything, but what if, and I mean what if, that girl isn't innocent? What do you plan to do? That's impossible. Li Jinan was very certain. She couldn't have done such a thing. The girl who is being sent for emergency treatment is her stepsister. She has a serious mental illness. My girlfriend is her new husband's ex-wife. There was a conflict between them before. Why? Li Beixing exclaimed. Ex-wife? Your girlfriend has been married before? Yeah, a marriage of convenience. Li Jinan's head was aching. He leaned back in the car seat and narrowed his eyes. It's the kind of marriage of convenience where nothing can be done. D***M, you guys are quite fashionable. How are you going to tell your family about this? Li Beixing felt like he was on the verge of breaking down. If you tell our mom that your girlfriend was married, divorced, and is now suspected of murder and locked up in the capital's prison, what do you think her reaction will be? Li Jinan's throbbing head was already throbbing with pain. He felt even more uncomfortable. I don't know. Now is not the time to be thinking about such things. The most important thing is to think of a way to get Yi Yu out and clear her name. Big brother, can you do that? Li Beixing frowned. After a long moment, he asked, Are you sure she wouldn't do such a thing? She wouldn't. Good. Now you have to find a lawyer. I remember that second brother's wife's parents are in the capital. The Rong family's status in the capital is unquestionable. You can get your second sister-in-law to help you. I've heard of the Guan family that you mentioned. This Guan Yanhong is not to be trifled with. He's a ruthless man. Furthermore, he only has one daughter. I'm afraid he won't let this matter rest. That's right. Using Su Chinxi's connections, Li Jinan had never thought about that. However, judging from the current situation, most of his, Li Beixing's and Li Xiqing's connections were in Kingstown. Guan Yanhong's status in the capital was not low. If they had to deal with it on their own, it would be troublesome. However, with the addition of a general from the capital, things would be much simpler. Li Jinan thought about it for a moment before replying, I got it. I'm hanging up. Li Beixing, Don't think too much about it. Since she's your girlfriend, of course we have to save her. I'm just afraid that you'll get yourself into trouble, and then it'll be hard to explain to your family. Grandpa's health isn't good, so don't spread this news back home. Yi Li Su, he knows that you. Su Yi Li Jikno Li. Chapter 1550. That's right. It would have been fine if it was just a grandfather. More importantly, there was more to it than that. Li Jinnan's headache intensified. He replied, "Got it. I'm hanging up." He hung up the phone and called Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi seemed to be busy. When she heard Li Jinnan's request, she agreed without hesitation. Li Jinnan drove back to the hotel where the wedding had just taken place. The venue was cordoned off and the police were coming and going. The crowd had yet to disperse. When they saw Li Jinnan arrive, many people started whispering and pointing at him. "That's the boyfriend of the culprit just now. He's quite handsome. Why would he fall for that kind of guy? I'm better than her. He's young and promising, but he's blind." Li Jinnan acted as if he hadn't heard the words of the people around him. He walked up to a police officer and asked, "What's the situation now?" The police officer looked up. When he saw that it was Yi Yuyu's boyfriend, his attitude darkened. He replied, "Other than the makeup artist's fingerprints, there are also Guan Kui's and Yi Yuyu's fingerprints." "What do you mean?" Li Jinnan had a bad feeling about this. In other words, other than the makeup artist and the other necessary personnel, Madame Yi Yuyu entered the room more often. When he saw the expression on Li Jinnan's face, the police officer felt a little sympathetic. He took out the photo of the evidence and said, "This young lady isn't simple. There are very few fingerprints in there. Even the door doesn't have her fingerprints on it. However, she still managed to leave her mark on the most crucial item." As she spoke, she raised her head and took out a Polaroid photo. She continued, "This cup is filled with lethal poison. It takes effect very quickly. Half of the water has been drunk and spilled on the ground. However, the amount of poison that Miss Guan Kui drank is enough to be fatal. Although she has been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment, from the looks of it, she is still in critical condition. You are Yi Yuyu's boyfriend, aren't you? You'll have to come back with us to give a statement." Li Jinnan's face darkened. In a low voice he said, "T. If she had such a mind, she wouldn't have lived for so long. What a bunch of fools. They don't even know that they're being played by a woman. Their brains must have been kicked by a donkey." Hearing that, the policeman lost his attitude and said, "I think you're the one who's being fooled by a woman. Miss Yi has a criminal record. 7 years ago, she pushed her stepsister off the cliff when she just came of age. Although the Guan family won't hold her responsible, it's still a fact even if you ignore it." Li Jinnan was filled with rage when he heard that. He laughed coldly and said, "Can't you think about why she didn't harm anyone else but Guan Kui? If she was really that kind of person, why had she been so well behaved all these years? Why hadn't anyone been harmed by her? Why had Guan Kui gotten her into trouble the moment she returned? Can't Guan Kui fall off the cliff and frame Yi Yuyu? Can't Guan Kui drink the poison and run out to put on a show?" Li Jinnan's tone wasn't very pleasant. The police officer was infuriated and retorted, "Who in their right mind would do such a thing? Don't forget that this woman is a lunatic." When he said that, the police officer was rendered speechless. Chapter 1551. When Li Jinnan was brought to the police station, he was asked a few questions about Yi Yuyu's daily life. How could Li Jinnan say anything else? He insisted that she was a good citizen and that she was extremely kind. After a round of questioning, Li Jinnan's attitude improved a lot. He was able to converse with the police officers in the station. In order to build a good relationship with them, Li Jinnan even brought up the names of Li Xiqing, Li Beixing, Li Sun, and Li Xiao. When the people in the station heard that Li Jinnan's background was so impressive, they all felt much better. They felt so much better that when he asked to see Yi Yuyu, they only looked at him for a while before letting him in. As he sat outside the visitation room, Li Jinnan saw Yi Yuyu being brought in from afar. Her hands were handcuffed. When she walked, the handcuffs clanked against each other. Yi Yuyu was still dressed in the same clothes. She looked very cool, but all the jewelry on her body had been removed. Her hair was a mess, and the originally exquisite makeup on her face had been ruined. She looked very pathetic. Her eyes were red and swollen. When she saw Li Jinnan, she bit her lip and quickly walked over. Her eyes were red as she looked at Li Jinnan. It was as if a warm current had been injected into the place where she had been terrified and lost. Yi Yuyu's originally uneasy feelings were instantly soothed. As he watched Yi Yu sit down, Li Jinan said, "Tell me what happened. Don't leave out a single detail." Yi Yu's eyes were a little hot. She looked at Li Jinan and repeated what she had just said to the police officers. Li Jinan's brows furrowed together. He thought for a moment before asking, "You said that she asked you to boil the water and you opened it for her?" Yi Yu nodded her head and replied, "At first I didn't dare say it. I was afraid that she would frame me. But she cried. She cried so miserably. She talked about our past. We really weren't like this in the past. She wasn't like this in the past either." Yi Yu's voice choked up. She lowered her head and said, "I felt a little sad when I saw her cry. Shenluo and is a jerk. She was just bewitched by him. At the end of the day she was just a pitiful person. She was abandoned and left alone. It was very pitiful." "So you gave it to her?" Li Jinan took a deep breath, gritted his teeth and growled, "I really want to open your head and see if it's filled with water or tofu." After being yelled at, Yi Yu pursed her lips and didn't dare say another word. She looked up and saw Li Jinan's livid face. He lowered his head in silence. "She tricked you into drinking water because she wanted to leave your fingerprints, right?" Yi Yu didn't dare to look up at him. She nodded her head. She felt guilty and restless. "What did she say after drinking the water?" Yi Yu looked up and thought for a moment before replying. "She said that I owed her so many years of debt. It's time for me to pay it back." "What do you owe her?" Li Jinan couldn't understand. What kind of hatred did she have to take revenge in this way? Furthermore, Guan Kui's extreme method had not only hurt Yi Yu, but it had also caused irreparable harm to herself. For example, when he fell off the cliff back then or this time. Chapter 1552. Yi Yu pursed her lips. This was a question that had been on her mind for many years. What did she owe her? Perhaps too much. Ever since she had joined the Guan family, Guan Yanhong had always taken good care of her. She could tell that Guan Kui wasn't too happy when Guan Yanhong was treating her well. However, she still maintained a smile on her face and spoke as if nothing had happened. She might have stolen away some of her father's love. Ever since she had known Shenluo, he had always paid more attention to her. At that time, Yi Yu could sense that Guan Kui might have liked Shenluo, and she might have stolen Shenluo. At the same time, Guan Kui had stolen the only family she had. Ever since they had joined the Guan family, Yi Tian had completely transformed from Yi Yu's mother to Guan Kui's mother. At first, she had harbored some fantasies about Yi Tian. After those slaps and those words, Yi Yu had completely given up on Yi Tian. Perhaps she had never treated Yi Tian as her own daughter. Perhaps Yi Tian only felt possessive and manipulative toward Yi Yu. Once Yi Yu left Yi Yu's control, things would change. Yi Yu didn't speak for a long time. Li Jinan was starting to get impatient. He said, "Don't tell me you don't know either." Yi Yu remained silent. After a long time she finally said, "I might have stolen the person she liked. She liked Shenluo, and very much. She liked him very much. She liked him so much that she was willing to throw herself off the cliff and tell everyone that she was the one who had pushed her off." Shenluo and sighed. She liked Yi Yu so much that, in order to consign Yi Yu to eternal damnation, she would drink poison and tell everyone that she was the one who had tried to kill her. Yi Yu could only passively choose to be framed. She was caught off guard by all sorts of attacks. Yi Yu didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Similarly, no one had given her the chance to do so. Even her biological mother was one of them. Li Jinan took a deep breath and asked, "All because of AB*TSH? You women are crazy." "That's right. Women are like that. For a man they can do anything." Yi Yu's lips twitched. "Back then I was equally crazy to marry Shenluo." Li Jinan's face darkened. "Are you still thinking about him?" Yi Yu shook her head. "No. After we divorced, our relationship was completely severed. At this moment, who knows where this guy has gone? He didn't appear at the wedding and no one has seen him. He left a letter in the room and didn't even want the bride." "How promising." Li Jinan laughed sarcastically. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Why did you have to wait until the last moment? Who were you putting on a show for?" "He really ran away from the wedding?" Yi Yu looked at him in realization. Is it possible that he went to look for Shin Manting? Yi Yu was right. Shenluo had indeed gone to see Shin Manting. However, Huaxia was so big that he had no idea where to start. According to Shin Manting's registration information, she had gone to Suzhou. However, Suzhou was so big that it was not easy to find a person. When Shenluo walked out of the airport, he felt that he was a little silly and pitiful. The surroundings were unfamiliar. There was not a single face that resembled Shin Manting's. Chapter 1553. Shin Luo and stood in the empty airport lobby for a while, at a loss as to what to do. He didn't know how long he stood there before an airport employee walked over with a polite smile. "Hello, sir. Welcome to Suzhou. How may I help you?" Shin Luo and snapped out of his daze and looked at the employee. He shook his head gently and asked, "How do I get to the taxi lane?" "Go straight. You'll see it when you turn left at the second intersection." Shin Luo and nodded his head blankly and said, "Thank you." He didn't have any luggage or backpack. Shin Luo and was dressed in a bridegroom's suit. His hair was styled in a handsome and trendy style, but the expression on his face was so blank that no one could see the joy and happiness of a newlywed. The employee stared at his back for a long time before walking away. He turned to his colleague and said, "I think I met a bridegroom just now. He was handsome but he looked very sad." Shin Luo and didn't realize that he was being whispered about. After he walked out, he gave the name of a random hotel and was taken to the place. After checking into the room, Shin Luo and felt exhausted. It wasn't far from the capital to Jiangnan. However, his heart felt as though it had already crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. He was indescribably tired. After lying down, he didn't feel the slightest bit sleepy. Shin Luo and looked at the snow-white ceiling. His mind was a mess. He shut his eyes tightly. He could clearly feel his heart beating heavily. Every beat was forceful. Every beat made him feel as though he was still alive. Was it really appropriate for such a person to be alive? If he returned to the capital, Guan Yanhong would definitely break his legs. He had already mentally prepared himself. After escaping, he realized that he was much more relaxed. He didn't love Guan Kui. It had been 6 hours since Guan Kui had been sent to the emergency room. Her stomach couldn't be any cleaner, but Guan Kui's vital signs still hadn't stabilized. This young and beautiful lady was once again lying in the emergency room. She was the subject of intensive care by all the doctors. Guan Yanhong cried out several times outside the emergency room. He couldn't calm down for a long time. He punched the wall, banged his head, and destroyed himself. The secretaries and relatives around her didn't know how to comfort her. With his only daughter in the emergency room, his life and death uncertain, Guan Yanhong was undoubtedly suffering the most. At this time, no matter how much anyone said, it would be useless. Unless Guan Kui could come back to life. After more than 6 hours, the door to the emergency room was finally opened. Guan Yanhong's eyes were bloodshot. He rushed forward and grabbed the doctor. "Doctor, how is my daughter?" The doctor didn't even have time to take off his mask. He was obviously shocked when he was grabbed. The doctor took off his mask and said, "We've tried our best." "What do you mean?" Guan Yanhong roared in disbelief. "What do you mean by that? What do you mean by trying your best? My daughter was just fine a moment ago. How could you not save her?" The doctor was startled by his roar and said, "I haven't finished speaking. Don't get agitated." Guan Yanhong was pulled back. Only then did the doctor dare to speak louder. "The patient is still unconscious and his condition isn't looking good. If he can wake up within 48 hours, he'll be safe." Chapter 1554. Guan Yanhong wasn't any calmer than before. He rushed forward and grabbed the doctor by the collar. "I don't care what you do. My daughter can't die. Do you hear me? She can't die." Guan Yanhong's emotions were clearly unstable. The doctors and nurses in the room rushed forward and pulled his hand away. The people behind him immediately pulled him down. The doctor heaved a sigh of relief when he was pulled down, but he still said, "I can't guarantee that. It all depends on the patient's will to live and the state of her recovery. If you continue arguing like this, the patient won't be able to rest well." Who knows? Guan Yanhong couldn't take it anymore. His only daughter, who he had always relied on, had been reduced to this state in an instant. To Guan Yanhong this was like a bolt from the blue. What was supposed to be a happy wedding had been ruined by ***. While Guan Yanhong was filled with remorse and pain, he also felt a deep sense of hatred. At a time like this, the most important thing was to ensure his daughter's safety. "I want to go in and see my daughter." It wasn't a plea or a statement. It was an order. His tone made the doctors feel displeased. The attending doctor said, "The patient needs silence. The most important thing now is to ensure that she gets absolute rest." Guan Yanhong looked at the attending doctor and growled, "I'm just going in to take a look. It won't be noisy. I'll be alone." His tone was harsh and it made everyone feel even more dissatisfied and angry. But he was Guan Kui's father. Hearing that, the doctor finally nodded his head. Guan Yanhong rushed in immediately. He looked at the ashen-faced Guan Kui on the bed. Her heartbeat was steady, but it was obvious that she wasn't in a good state. Guan Yanhong's heart ached so much that he couldn't speak. His heart was filled with hatred for Yi Yuyu. 7 years ago, and now she had laid her hands on his daughter twice in a row. Did she really think he was a decoration? The doctor walked in and waved at Guan Yanhong. Come out for a moment. Guan Yanhong gazed longingly at his daughter a few more times before walking out of the room. The doctor closed the door and said softly, the patient's condition isn't very good. Her will to live isn't very strong. My suggestion is that you find someone she cares about or someone who can awaken her will to live. Your daughter is supposed to be getting married today, right? You can ask her husband or the person who framed her today to come along. The doctor said very seriously, even if it's hatred, normal people will want to take revenge. Moreover, with your daughter's current condition, she needs external stimulation the most at this time. The thought of Yi Yuyu filled Guan Yanhong's heart with hatred, but the doctor's words had mentioned another person. Shen Luo-an. Little Su. Yes. Hurry up and find Shen Luo-an. Xiao Su hesitated and said, Mr. Shen doesn't seem to be in the capital anymore. When Guan Yanhong heard that, he flew into a rage and retorted, how is that possible? Today is his wedding day with Kei Yi. How could he not be in the capital? Furthermore, if he's not in the hotel, he's on his way here. Call him and ask him to come over immediately. Chapter 1555. It was a small envelope with the name Shen Luo and written on it. When he saw it, Guan Yanhong had a bad feeling about it. He reached out, wanting to take the envelope, but in the next second, his hand froze in midair. Looking at Xiao Su, Guan Yanhong's expression darkened. He asked, what's written inside? Xiao Su shook her head. I don't know. I didn't open it, but I think it was a wedding day. Leaving an envelope without seeing the person was obvious that it couldn't be anything good. Guan Yanhong's face was ashen. He took the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a notebook. There was only one line of words on it, making the paper look especially empty. I'm sorry. I don't want to let you down. Those few words were enough to explain Shen Luo-an's intentions. Guan Yanhong was furious and roared, what the hell is this? Shen Luo-an. Xiao Su was startled by Guan Yanhong's outburst. She pursed her lips and said, I did a quick check. Mr. Shen chased the driver out of the wedding car and drove it to the airport. Guan Yanhong clenched his fist. The paper in his hand crumpled into a ball. Find him for me? Yes. Also get a lawyer. I want to sue Yi Yuyu. Guan Yanhong's eyes were bloodshot. I want her to die in prison. Xiao Su lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. She quickly agreed and left. The situation didn't look optimistic. Li Jinan had been busy for the past 2 days. The next day he contacted Rong Haiyue. Rong Haiyue belonged to the military and couldn't directly intervene in the matter. It was a little troublesome to deal with. After using all sorts of connections, he finally contacted Rong Haiyue's nephew, who was also Su Chenxi's cousin, Rong Rue. This wasn't the first time Li Jinan had heard of Rong Rue. As the husband of Li Xiqing's super assistant and the incident with Tang Menjing, Rong Rue's name was well known. Although Rong Rue wasn't in the capital often, he was very practical and sociable. He also had many friends. Through his network of contacts, Li Jinan got in touch with a well-known lawyer in the capital who was known to have never lost a case. By the time he understood the situation and saw Yi Yuyu again, 2 days had passed. Everyone knows that Miss Yi and Miss Guan are inside. No one can prove that Miss Guan drank the poison and Miss Yi is innocent. The most troublesome thing is that Miss Yi helped her open the bottle. The most crucial point of this matter is on it. Miss Ye's fingerprints are clearly left on it. In addition to your previous grievances, the lawyer's words were very serious. Yi Yuyu sat across from them. She was very nervous. Especially after hearing the lawyer's words, his heart became even colder. More importantly, Guan Yanhong's status in the capital is not low. The higher-ups will likely give him some face. Recently, I've heard that he's dealing with this matter. He's even said that he's going to sentence you to death. Yi Yuyu trembled slightly and looked at Li Jinan helplessly. Li Jinan stood across from her. There was a layer of glass between them. He couldn't touch her at all. He could only reach out to look at her through the glass and whisper, "Don't be afraid. Mr. Lawyer isn't done yet." Chapter 1556. The breakthrough point was Guan Kui's mental illness. If a psychopath acted up, he would really do anything. Guan Kui's current situation was not optimistic. No one could guarantee that she was still thinking like a normal person. Therefore, the biggest breakthrough point was Guan Kui. I just received the latest news. Guan Kui is still in the ICU. Her life is in danger. If she wakes up, she will be safe and sound. Everything will turn for the better. If she doesn't wake up, then there will be no evidence, Li Jinan said with a solemn expression. Therefore, we can only pray that she wakes up soon. The Guan family status is not low. Guan Yanhong frequently enters the political districts in the capital. Furthermore, the capital is their headquarters. There are many things that are difficult to manipulate in the dark here. Lawyer Ye's expression was solemn as he continued. Rong Rue has been a good friend of mine for many years. I will do my best. However, based on the current situation, Guan Yanhong is not weak at all. He has dominated the real estate industry for so many years and has accumulated quite a bit of power. His only weakness is probably his daughter. When he heard Lawyer Ye's words, Li Jinan suddenly laughed. Are you saying that the Li family is no match for the Guan family? A mighty dragon cannot suppress a local snake. Third young master, this is the capital. Li Jinan's expression did not look too good. What Lawyer Ye had said made sense. He took a deep breath and asked, what do we do now? We wait and see. See, an hospital in the capital. In the ICU, more than a dozen doctors and nurses rushed in. The sound of the heartbeat machine rang out, and a series of urgent alarms could be heard. The golden 48 hours that the doctor had mentioned had already passed. Just a few minutes ago, Guan Kui's heartbeat monitor had sounded the alarm. Everyone was on standby and ready to go. Guan Yanhong stood at the door. His eyes were bloodshot. He covered his mouth and paced back and forth. The heartbeat monitor inside gradually stopped. Guan Yanhong raised his head and looked inside. Tears quickly flowed from his eyes. He squatted down on the floor and wailed bitterly. A middle-aged man's wails attracted the attention of many people. Guan Yanhong did not seem to notice that he had lost his composure. His cries were loud and sorrowful. His secretary Xiao Su was at a loss as to how to console him. She stood to the side and looked at Guan Yanhong's tall and frail back. She was at a loss as to what to do and said, the doctor isn't out yet. Don't worry too early. The door of the operating theater opened. Inside, several doctors and nurses pushed out a bed. On it was a human figure who was covered. When Xiao Su saw this scene, he secretly clicked his tongue. His heart ached and he almost cried again. The doctor took off his mask, his face full of regret and self-blame. He bowed deeply and said, I'm sorry, we tried our best. Guan Yanhong collapsed to the ground. His sobs shook the heavens as he helped Xiao Su to her feet. Xiao Su led Guan Yanhong forward. When they lifted the white cloth, they saw Guan Kui's ashen face. His daughter, who was originally full of happiness and was about to be married today, was poisoned to death just like that. Guan Yanhong's sobs intensified. Suddenly he raised his head. His eyelids fluttered, and the strong body of a father fell backward without any warning. Chapter 1557. With the news of Guan Kui's death, everything seemed to be at an impasse. After a few days of silence, Guan Yanhong finally brought the matter up again and took Yi Yuyu to court. The evidence at the scene and witnesses were present. The most crucial piece of evidence was Yi Yuyu's fingerprints. Lawyer Yi also pointed out that the cup contained a very rare chemical poison. It was considered a chemical contraband and was very rare. It was very difficult for people who were not familiar with chemical medicine to come into contact with such a drug. Lawyer Yi raised a few points of suspicion. 1. Yi Yuyu didn't have the time to buy such things. Even if she did, she wouldn't have been able to. 2. Yi Yuyu was currently living in Kingstown with Li Jinan. Her life was very comfortable and she enjoyed a good life. Why would she kill a stepsister with whom she had a grudge? There was no motive for the crime. 3. Yi Yuyu was called into the room by Guan Kui. Furthermore, Guan Kui was mentally ill. It was highly possible that Guan Kui had orchestrated and acted out all by herself in order to frame Yi Yuyu. 4. On the day of Guan Kui's wedding, the groom didn't show up. Furthermore, the groom was a widely recognized genius in medicine. He had come into direct contact with the drug. In other words, Shen Luo, and was the biggest suspect. In court, after hearing Lawyer Ye's words, the judges discussed it briefly. Finally, the judge announced that the suspicions were established. Let's invite the plaintiff to speak. With that, Yi Yuyu breathed a sigh of relief. Did that mean that they had the upper hand? The lawyer that Guan Yanhong had hired was very eloquent. With a few words, he brought the focus back to Yi Yuyu. He insisted that Yi Yuyu was the one who had framed Guan Kui. That wasn't the only incident. At the same time, the plaintiff's lawyer brought up the incident from many years ago and insisted that Yi Yuyu was jealous and unresigned. She had always wanted to get rid of Guan Kui because of how outstanding Guan Kui was. That incident had destroyed Guan Kui's legs, but it hadn't killed her. Yi Yuyu was indignant and had been waiting for an opportunity to strike a second time. That was why the incident at the wedding had occurred. After that, the case, which was not simple in the first place, became even more difficult. At the last moment, Yi Yuyu brought up a crucial point of the case. Guan Kui's legs can walk. Guan Yanhong shouted from the audience, "Bullsh *T." There was an uproar at the scene and soon the judge announced the adjournment of the court. They still had to examine Guan Kui's body. Things were getting complicated. However, the other suspect mentioned by lawyer Yi never appeared. It was as if Shen Luo and had vanished from the face of the earth. There was no movement at all. August 8th, heavy rain. It had been summer recently and there was more and more rain. It was getting more and more inconvenient to travel. He seemed to have caught a cold. Recently he had a slight cold. However, the baby was still healthy and everything was fine. The class went well and everything was fine. It was just a little lonely. Even though I came into contact with a lot of people every day, and the neighbors who came and went took good care of me, I couldn't integrate into their world. I don't fit in with them. I want to go. The next stop was Li Town, Province G. It was raining cats and dogs. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Shen Luo and stood by the window of the guest house and looked out at the dark clouds covering the sky and the pedestrians running. He found it a little funny. Chapter 1558. On the third day of his escape, he hadn't contacted anyone. He hadn't given his family or anyone an explanation. His phone hadn't been switched on. Even Shen Luo and despised his evasion. He put down the wine glass. The empty bottles were piled up in the corner under the bed. The pungent smell of alcohol was pungent. Shen Luo and took out his phone that had been switched off and turned it on. In less than a minute, all sorts of messages bombarded his phone. Shen Luo and had expected it. He picked up his phone and glanced at it. He saw a piece of heavy news. Dad, Kui is dead. Where are you? Shen Jilia's mother. Luo, and something happened to Kui. Why aren't you back yet? How much longer are you going to hide outside? Uncle Guan, if you come back I'll break your legs. There were all sorts of messages and WeChat messages. Shen Luo and clicked on them one by one. The more he read, the colder his heart became. Shen Luo and had originally thought that they were just joking, but it was replaced by an indescribable seriousness. Guan Kui is dead? Shen Luo and turned on his phone and called Shen Jilia. Shen Jilia seemed to be busy. It took him a while to answer the call. The moment he picked up, he heard Shen Jilia's bombarding voice. You're finally willing to turn your phone on? Where have you been the past few days? Do you know what happened recently? Shen Luo An's expression was solemn. He felt a faint sense of relief as he asked, what happened to Kui? Was it a collective joke? Or perhaps it was just a ploy to trick him back? After all, it was such an important day. Him leaving just like that would have a significant impact on the girl. Shen Luo An's wishful thinking was quickly shattered. Shen Jilia's tone was solemn as he said, Guan Kui is dead. Shen Luo An's heart sank to its lowest point. Yi Yuyu poisoned her. After she drank it, she was sent to the emergency room, but she didn't make it. She died in the hospital. Shen Jilia took a deep breath and said, Brother, if you wanted to marry her, why did you agree to marry her? Guan Kui was still so young. How could you bear to lose such a precious life because of you? Shen Jilia continued, You've let Yi Yuyu down. You've let Sister Manting down. Now even Guan Kui has died because of you. Doesn't your conscience feel uneasy? Shen Jilia was speechless. Jilia, you must be joking, right? How could Kei possibly die? Shen Luo and asked, feeling very down. Furthermore, it was Yi Yuyu. Although Yi Yuyu has a history with Guan Kui, she would never do something like that. Jilia can't be Yi Yuyu. She's not that kind of person. Shen Luo and said with certainty, there must be some misunderstanding or something went wrong somewhere. Chapter 1559. Such a simple description made Shen Luo An's heart ache. Guan Kui is dead. She was killed by Yi Yuyu? What a joke. Yi Yuyu couldn't have done such a thing. She wouldn't have been able to resist even if she had been killed, let alone kill someone. That kind of woman was as weak as a little lamb. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been treated this way by him all these years. Ever since Guan Kui's death, everything had changed. Shenluo, and was silent for a moment before saying, "I'll go back immediately. Tell me what happened in a nutshell." He laughed coldly and replied, "What were you doing earlier? Guan Kui is already dead. Guan Yanhong has already made it known that as long as he sees you, he'll kill you. He doesn't even give face to Dad. Your return now bodes ill rather than well." Yi Chanshan looked at Shinjilia coldly. When Shenluo and heard that, he hung up the phone. He went to the bathroom and cleaned himself up. Soon after, he left the house and hailed a taxi to the airport. Even if Shenluo and didn't know the whole story now, someone would tell him when he reached the capital. There was a new member in Yushio Villa. Li Jianyue and her two brothers were circling around it. It was a small puppy. Its fur was yellow and its eyes were dark and bright. It was running around the little ones with its tongue out. Li Jianyue held a ball in her hand and shouted at the golden retriever, "Little Sue, come here." Little Sue had just arrived at the house that day and was unfamiliar with the name. When it saw Li Jianyue waving at it, it immediately wagged its tail and ran over. It circled around the little one's feet and cried out in a childish voice, "Woof! Ursu, don't get too close. Be careful not to get bitten. You'll have to get an injection." Su Chinsi's stomach was already slightly bulging. She looked at her daughter helplessly and said, "Mosin, look after your sister." Li Mosin immediately came over and pulled Li Jianyue's hand over. He said, "Ursu, don't let mommy worry. The puppy's not clean. Granny Rong is going to give it a bath." When Li Jianyue heard that she was going to bathe the puppy, her eyes lit up and she exclaimed, "Really? You're going to bathe the puppy? That's great." "Not now. In a few days, if the puppy can't adapt to the environment, it will not be acclimatized. When the puppy vomits, it will be too pitiful." Li Jinshen came forward. Li Jianyue didn't quite understand and said, "Mom, if you're going to Grandpa's house, can you bring us along? I don't want little Sue anymore. Anyway, little Sue isn't fun." "No, you have to stay at home. Great-grandpa hasn't been feeling well recently, so you can't go back to the old mansion. You have to be good and listen to Granny Rong, do you hear me?" Li Jianyue was a little unhappy. She pouted and asked, "Then why can brother go?" The little boy looked at Li Jinshen unhappily and said, "Mommy is biased and so is Daddy. Why is older brother going and not us? Be good at home with brother Mosin. Brother is going to stay at Grandpa's house. There are no children at Grandpa's house and no one to accompany him. It's very pitiful." Su Chinsi touched Li Jianyue's head. "I'll bring you delicious food when I come back." Chapter 1560. Listen to Mommy. Li Xiqing's voice was unquestionable. He walked over and said, "The dog can't replace its older brother, but it can play with you." Su Chinsi straightened her back. Her back was a little sore. "Let's go." "Okay." Li Xiqing came forward and held Su Chinsi's arm. "Are you still not feeling well?" "It's all right. It's much better than before." Su Chinsi held her waist and said, "Why didn't I have such a strong reaction when I was pregnant with him? This little guy must be very naughty." Li Xiqing smiled when he heard that and said, "It's good to be naughty. It's best if it's a girl. That way our family will have two little princesses." "Ah, but I like a little brother." Li Jianyue immediately interrupted. She looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of big black eyes and said, "Daddy, I don't like a little sister. We don't know if it's a little brother or a little sister, but this is not a reason for you to run out. Go back." Li Xiqing's voice had a hint of a smile. The little girl was not afraid at all. She giggled and hugged Li Xiqing's thigh. "Daddy, take me with you. I want to see Grandpa too. I want to see Grandpa Rong and Grandma Rong and Grandpa Song. I haven't seen Grandpa Song for a long time." The little girl pouted and said, "Daddy, take me with you." "No." Li Xiqing tapped her little nose and said, "Nanny Rong, quickly take Ursa back. Mosin, take little sister back." Su Chinsi and Li Jinshen stood behind. Dace's eyes were full of reluctance as he looked at them. His snow-white and tender face was a little sad, and his eyes were a little red. Li Mosin came forward and held Li Jianyue's hand. He looked at Li Xiqing and said, "Daddy, will Dace live at Grandpa's house in the future? He's also going to school there. Won't he come back?" Li Xiqing looked at Li Mosin with a pair of dark eyes and nodded. "Yes." Li Mosin's little face was full of sadness. He looked at Li Xiqing and asked, "Why?" "Because there are no children in Grandpa's family. Grandpa hopes that a child can live with them. Grandpa and Grandma are old and need a sensible child to accompany them." Li Xiqing's explanation was reasonable. It was the truth, but it was hard to accept it when he said it out loud. How could Su Chinsi bear to part with him? When she saw his expression, All the reluctance in her heart was drawn out again. She squatted down and whispered, "He'll be back. Bring him back when the holidays are over." She looked at him innocently and said, "Older brother is going to school. He'll be back after school. I'll wait for older brother to finish school. Let's play together at night." Li Jianxian stood alone in the back. When he heard Li Jianyue's words, there was an indescribable sadness in his heart. He immediately turned around and opened the car door with red eyes. Then he sat in the car himself. Turning his head, Li Xiqing saw his silent movements and knew that he was not feeling well. Chapter 1561. Don't cry. Li Xiqing sat in the front passenger seat. His voice was a little serious. "You're a boy. What did I teach you?" Li Jianxian stopped crying and turned his head to look out the window. "Be strong. What is the purpose of us going to Grandpa's house this time?" "To accompany Grandpa." Li Jianxian lowered his head. His voice was a little timid, but he quickly said, "But I don't want to go." Objection overruled. Li Xiqing looked out the window and said, "We will accompany you. After you are familiar with the environment, we will leave." Su Qinxi hugged her son and said, "Don't be afraid. There are many fun things at Grandpa's house. Grandpa has already prepared a room for you at home. All the toys you want are there. There are also many children in the courtyard. You will be very happy." Not happy, not happy, Li Jianxian didn't speak. He looked out the window and bit his lip as tears slipped down. His 5-year-old, someone else's 5-year-old, when they arrived at the capital, it was already evening. After sending Li Jianxian to the Rong residence, Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian were very happy. They came forward with smiles on their faces and welcomed their little grandson in. When Li Jianxian saw Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian, he nodded politely and said, "Hello, Grandpa." "Hello, Grandma." Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue both smiled and said, "Hello, Desu. Come in. Grandpa and Grandma have prepared a room for you. Your grandmother personally decorated it for you. Come in and take a look." Li Jianxian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He followed the old couple in. Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing had mainly sent the child to accompany the old couple. At the same time, they wanted to see how Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan were doing. He directly left the child here, and after informing them, he turned around and left. Li Jianxian looked at them, and the uneasiness in his heart grew. Looking at their backs, he called out, "Dad, Mom?" The smiles on Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian's faces froze. Seeing Li Jianxian pretending to be strong despite being a little scared, they felt a little sorry for him. Compared to other 5-year-old children, Li Jianxian was much stronger. When Su Qianxi heard Li Jianxian's voice, she couldn't bear to see it happen. Her initial worry for Yi Yuyu dissipated. She glanced at Li Xiqing and said, "Hubby, go ahead. I'll stay here with the child. You can tell me what's going on when you come back." "Yes." Li Xiqing nodded his head and turned around to rub Li Jianxian's head gently. "Be a good boy. If you need anything, you can look for Grandpa and Grandma. They'll do everything for you." "Dad." Li Jianxian looked at him with a pair of eyes that were identical to his own and asked, "Will you still bring me back to Kingstown?" Li Xiqing pursed his lips. There was not much of a smile on his face. The hand that was rubbing his head paused slightly. Then he pinched his cheek and said, "Are you afraid that Dad doesn't want you anymore?" Li Jianxian curled his lips, lowered his head, and did not speak. Seeing this, Li Xiqing knew that he must have guessed correctly. He said, "You're young but you think a lot." Feeling helpless, he said, "Every one of my children will be an elite in the future. I will not lose any of them." Chapter 1562. More importantly, Mosen wasn't their biological son. Why did they send him to the capital and not Mosen? Could it be that they wanted to raise Mosen as their own child so they didn't want him anymore? Su Qianxi was stunned when she heard that. She had never imagined that Mosen at such a young age would have such thoughts in his mind. Li Xiqing hadn't expected that either. When he heard that, he found it funny and his mood became serious. Li Xiqing squatted down and looked at Li Jianxian with a serious expression. "Do you know why I chose to send you here?" Li Jianxian shook his head, looking aggrieved. "Because you are my son and your mother's son. Grandpa has no children, and your mother is his only daughter. They are getting old and need someone to accompany them." Li Xiqing looked at his son and explained, which was rare. "Ursu is a girl. She cries easily, is delicate, and is a little stupid. You know that, don't you?" Li Jianxian nodded with tears in his eyes, but the tears in his eyes gradually disappeared. "Do you know why I didn't send Mosen here?" In fact, Li Xiqing was rarely patient with children. He rarely had such patience, except when he was explaining the exercises to them. Now he was staring at him and said word by word, because he is not our biological child. You also know that Mosen was adopted by us later on. He is our family, but he has nothing to do with Grandpa and Grandma. Do you know that? The tears in Li Jianxian's eyes had completely disappeared. He looked at Li Xiqing and nodded his head vigorously. Li Xiqing was a little relieved. He reached out and patted his head. Because you are our child, biological, so I sent you here. Firstly, you can accompany Grandpa and Grandma. Secondly, you can train. Do you still remember the sentence that Grandpa hung at the back of the study? What does it say? Li Jianxian thought for a moment before saying, the Li family doesn't raise useless people. It's good that you know. The Li family doesn't raise useless people. Only steel that has been tempered can become hard. You may be young now, but this is not a reason for you to be weak. I need you to become stronger. Li Xiqing looked at him with a serious expression and said, Great-grandfather is old and Grandpa and Grandma are not young now. If one day I'm gone, you have to take care of the whole family, your mother and your sister. Do you hear me? Li Jianxian looked at Li Xiqing. His eyes were clear and his face, which was very similar to Li Xiqing's, was moved. Even Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue were very surprised by his way of education. Was it really appropriate to feed such chicken soup to such a young child? What surprised them even more was that Li Jianxian didn't look like he didn't understand at all. Instead, he nodded his head very seriously and said, yes. Recently, something happened to little uncle's girlfriend in the capital. Apart from bringing you here, your mother and I are also going to check on your little uncle's situation. Your little uncle's girlfriend might end up in jail. Any more serious and he would be sentenced to death. Li Jianxian's eyes widened and he said, the police wrongly accused a good person? Little Aunt wouldn't do anything bad. We don't know yet. Daddy and Mommy are going to take a look. You stay at Grandpa's house and wait for us to come back. The more Qin Shuhua thought about it, the more she felt that something was off. She made a call to Li Jinan, but he seemed to be very busy. It took a few more calls before he finally picked up. Hello. Li Jinan's voice was filled with exhaustion. Chapter 1566. When he heard that, Li Jinan paused in his actions. He glared at Shen Luo, and like a lion on the edge of a rage that could swallow him up at any moment. Shen Luo, and chuckled at his rage. He asked, do you hate me that much? Li Jinan laughed coldly. His expression was devoid of warmth as he said, you don't have the right. Shen Luo, and wasn't angry. He reached out to remove Li Jinan's hand and asked, if that's the case, what's the meaning of this? Such a repulsive stance didn't intimidate Li Jinan in the slightest. He remained motionless. A pair of deep, dark eyes stared at him. He narrowed them and asked, what did you mean by turning yourself in earlier? Shen Luo, and pulled his hand down even more forcefully and replied, don't you understand? Turning myself in? Li Jinan's gaze was sharp as he stared at him. You killed Guan Kui, didn't you? No. Shen Luo, and put his hand down. He looked down at Li Jinan's hand and said, can't you speak properly? You're making me very afraid. Li Jinan released his hand. Shen Luo, and straightened his clothes and said, Guan Kui's death has nothing to do with me. But I know that Yi Yuyu couldn't have killed her. Of course I know that. Given Yi Yuyu's temperament, it would be fine as long as she wasn't killed by others. Why would she harm others? What a joke. So there's a high possibility that it was all an act. Guan Kui didn't die at all. Shen Luo, An's expression was calm, but the words that came out of his mouth were unsettling. When Li Jinan heard that, his sharp eyes flashed. He asked, what do you mean? Shen Luo, and wasn't prepared to explain. He looked inside and asked, aren't you going to invite me in? Li Jinan was currently residing in one of Li Xiqing's properties in the capital. He was only temporarily staying there. When he heard that, Li Jinan wasn't stingy. He turned to the side and allowed Shen Luo and to walk in. They sat facing each other. Li Jinan's expression was wary. The corners of Shen Luoan's lips curled up slightly, but there was a hint of bitterness in it. He asked, how has Yuyu been lately? Now that I'm in prison, do you think it'll be better? The Guan family has no intention of letting her off the hook. Recently they've been pinning all sorts of crimes on her. Guan Yanhong has already made up his mind to sentence her to death. This is all thanks to you. Li Jinan scoffed. It's my fault. I've let them down. Whether it's Yu or Kei, it's all because of me that they turned against each other. Shen Luo, and looked at Li Jinan and enunciated each word clearly. Guan Yanhong hates Yu. 7 years ago she pushed Kei Yi off the cliff. It wasn't Yu, Li Jinan said with certainty. Yu wouldn't do something like that. Shen Luo, and was momentarily at a loss for words. Chapter 1567. Shen Luo, Anne's words made Li Jinan frown. What do you mean? Back then he and Guan Kui's mother were difficult to get along with. During an argument he drove off in a fit of anger. In the end he got into a car accident and his car exploded. Just when everyone thought he was dead, Guan Kui's mother committed suicide. In the end, on the night of her mother's death, he returned. When Li Jinan heard the story he found it incredulous. When Shen Luo and saw his expression he slowly continued, after he returned, although he looked very sad, it didn't take long for him to start having girlfriends. Later he hooked up with a married woman. After that woman got a divorce the two of them got married. That woman was Yi Yu's mother, Yi Tian. Li Jinan had heard a little about Yi Tian's family. He nodded his head and wasn't surprised. He didn't give any response to the incident back then, but many people were wondering if it was a self-directed act to force his wife to her death. Shen Luo, Anne's voice was slow. He paused for a moment before continuing, but there's no evidence. Do you have water to drink? Li Jinan glared at him angrily at his sudden pause. He stood up and went to the kitchen to get a bottle of mineral water. He tossed it to him and asked, So, you suspect that Guan Kui isn't dead and that she's only trying to frame Yi Yu? Yes. Then, what about the surrender you mentioned earlier? This entire incident happened because of me, Shen Luo, and said. Now that Yi Yu and Guan Kui are in this state, I cannot be pardoned. Shen Luo, and looked at Li Jinan. I've let her down. I'll help you with this matter. As long as we can find evidence to prove that Guan Kui is still alive, there will be a turn for the better. But Guan Kui's funeral is in a few days, Li Jinan said. His body will be cremated this afternoon. All the evidence points to Yi Yu and you're saying this to me? Li Jinan found it laughable. At the same time he felt a deep sense of helplessness. Guan Yanhong isn't someone to be trifled with. If you want to deal with him you'll have to do it quickly. Otherwise, I have plenty of ways to make things difficult for you in the future. Shen Luo, and chuckled when he heard that. It won't be easy. If Yu is sentenced to death, I won't have an easy time even without you. Don't worry. As he spoke, he opened the bottle of water and took a sip before saying, I believe that Yi Yu wouldn't do something like that. She doesn't have the guts, but Guan Kui does. What do you believe? You didn't even believe what happened back then and you believe this? Are you a spy sent by Guan Yanhong? What happened back then? I actually believed in Yu because I knew that it was impossible for Yu to do something like that. But back then I was young and didn't have the ability to judge for myself. Everyone was blaming her. You know, when it comes to public opinion, it will become true when enough people talk about it. Excuses? Then how do you know about it now? Shen Luo, and smiled bitterly. Recently, I talked to Guan Kui's psychiatrist and went through all of her medical records. Li Jinan was stunned. What? Chapter 1569. Pregnant? Those 3 words were like a bomb to Shen Luo An's ears. Caught off guard, all of his defenses, all of his fortresses, were blown to smithereens. Pregnant? Yi Yu is pregnant? Li Jinan took a long time to react before bursting out in laughter. Pregnant? That means that Guan Yanhong wants to frame her. No matter how he tries to pull strings, it's impossible to sentence him to death. Lawyer Yi was silent when he heard that. Shouldn't most men's first reaction be, I'm pregnant. I'm going to be a father? Why is it different when it comes to Li Jinan? The first thing that comes to mind isn't the child, but the mother of the child doesn't have to die. Lawyer Yi paused for a moment before replying, from a legal perspective, that's true. Yeah. Li Jinan's heartbeat sped up. He was overwhelmed with excitement, but his rationality kept his emotions under control. You have to take good care of her. It doesn't matter how you pull strings. You have to keep an eye on her. I'm afraid Guan Yanhong won't let this go easily. Don't worry, Mr. Li, leave it to me. There won't be a problem. Lawyer Yi already had a comprehensive plan. I'll need your cooperation. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. The smile on Li Jinan's face faded. His eyes were as cold as ice. No matter what, she's my woman and my child. I won't let them stay in jail for long. My woman, my child. My woman, my child. When Shenluo heard that, he felt a little dazed. Yi Yuyu's smile was like a flower in front of him. She had followed him relentlessly, calling him Brother Luo, and with a sweet smile. Time flew by. More than a decade had passed. They had fallen in love, been in love, and hated each other. From marriage to divorce, every step and every day was vivid in his mind. Even though they were divorced, Shenluo still didn't feel that there was much distance between them. Now that he could personally feel Li Jinnan's joy, he felt as if he had just woken up from a dream. She was different after all. The little girl who had followed him all those years ago and called him Brother Luo, was no longer the same. She had become someone else's woman. It was he, Shenluo, who had pushed her away. At this point, Shenluo's heart was filled with mixed feelings. The joys, sorrows, bitterness, and spiciness all fused together in his chest in an uncontrollable manner. Li Jinnan hung up the phone and turned around to see Shenluo's expression. She narrowed her eyes slightly, but before she could say anything, she heard Shenluo say with a bitter laugh, "Congratulations." The joy that Li Jinnan had suppressed once again surged out of control. The corners of his lips curled up in a proud smile. He nodded his head slightly and said, "Thank you." Shenluo stood up and said, "I'm leaving now. Call me if there's any progress." Li Jinnan didn't say anything. He stood up and walked him out the door. As for Shenluo, he glanced at him and chuckled. "Yuyu is a good girl. I hope you'll treat her well." "Don't worry. I'm not a scumbag." Li Jinnan smiled. "Have a safe trip." Shenluo chuckled and looked ahead. A gust of wind blew gently, lifting up his hair and entering his eyes. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.